This broadcast of the Competizione Performance League World Series is brought to you by Malwa Transport, oversized cargo and trucking logistics specialists of Quebec. Visit their website on www.malwa-transport.ca. Good afternoon and good evening, race fans. Welcome back to TRTM for today's coverage of the Competizione Performance League World Series Round 6. As always, I am Regan Clark, and you join us here into the second half of the season on the World Series as we make our way over to a sunny Stavelot, Belgium, here at the world's largest FIA Grade 1 circuit, the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps. Founded in 1921, originally as a street circuit and comprised of 20 turns and 4.3 miles, a staggering distance of FIA Grade 1. The largest of the Grade 1 circuits then, and the current home of the Belgian Grand Prix, having seen racing as early as 1925, meaning that outside of Formula 1 jurisdiction, the Belgian Grand Prix has been going for over a century now. Its first ever Formula 1 Belgian Grand Prix was in 1950 in the inaugural season of the Formula 1 World Championship and was won by Juan Manuel Fangio. It has traded hands over the years with two other circuits, among them that being the Circuit Zolder, as well as the Circuit Neville over the years, and saw a bit of a combination of those three circuits until about 1984, and that's when thereafter Spa would solidify its grasp on the Belgian Grand Prix for its forever home now, and has been consistently on the ball every year for running in Formula 1 since 1983. Outside of Grand Prix racing, it sees the Intercontinental GT Challenger Spa 24 Hours, an event that has lasted for over 102 years, with its first race in 1924. The FIA World Endurance Championship sees the 6 Hours of Spa, which was first ran in its predecessors in 1953 and saw resurgent races from 1963 to 1975, 1981 and 1990, and then 1999 through to the turn of the millennium to where we are today here in 2026. The FIM Endurance World Championship has seen the 8 Hours of Spa compete since 1973, and the European Le Mans Series has seen the 4 Hours of Spa since 2004. So outside of Grand Prix racing, this is one of the largest hubs for endurance racing in continental Europe. This tiny little country here, Belgium, has seen some of the densest packed grids of motor vehicles the world has ever known. It forms part of that holy trinity of endurance racing circuits. Some could make the argument the holy quaternity when you include circuits like Daytona, but other than that, you also have, of course, Spa, the Circuit de la Sarthe, and the Nürburgring Nordschleife. In terms of European venues, this is one of a dime dozen. And a fantastic place to find ourselves then on the run in towards the second half of the World Series. Coming away from the Red Bull Ring in Austria, we had great racing throughout round 5, but heading into today, we're back in on the same format as last. A 120-minute race to follow, but we'll get on into the specifics in just a moment's time. We're in the last 7 minutes of free practice. We've been following on here with Jonas Franke, but diverting our attention over towards Ford to see things from the point of view of, if we can find him here, Christian Lebay. Last round saw him reclaim the mantle of a race win for the first time since round 2 of the championship, with Richard Cecil returning for the same stroke there from round 2. The same lineup that we saw all the way back in round 2 we got last week when we went to the Red Bull Ring. Taking a look as to where that affects things championship standings wise, looking in the pro standings, Lebay leads over Tanguay, the two separate, as it would stand, by about 18 points. Looking here, 28 points. Dalan Such in third, back on the rise after his return from round 5. He's ahead of Wright in 4th place. With Jonas Franke, we followed on with for a moment there, now 5th in the championship. His teammate Rafael Bayer drops to 6th. Brooklyn Donkin in 7th, and behind him there is Lucas Milch in 8th place with 91 points. 9th place for Kyle Jenkins with 86 points, and rounding out the top 10, Ben Cheeseman with 75 points. Taking a look into the AM standings here, Richard Cecil continues to lead over Sergio Belda, the two separate, by 23 points in the championship. Ivan Sanchez in 3rd, and their fellow teammate at the Holkianos Motorsports team, JM Quito, now joins the top 5 in a joint 4th with Christophe Dupois, the pair of them with 105 points. Everaldo dos Santos, a rising star in the AM category, 2-time race winner in this series, 6th place in the championship ahead of Andrew Veldkamp by only 3 points difference. Didier Potvin in 8th place with 83 points. 9th place for Stephen Black with 73 points, and I believe only a single point behind is Joey Fisher, yes, with 72 points in the championship. Taking a look over towards the teams championship as we pick up on the conversation of that After the first half of the championship, Malwa Racing leads in the Pro category and Holkianos leads in the AMS. Taking a look throughout the order there, you can see Malwa, Black Nitro and 5-star on the podium with Velocity and Clutch Kick in the top 5 for the pros. And for the podium, it's Holkianos, the Malwa AM division and Tomcats Motorsports on the podium with Pinnacle Endurance Racing and Fora de Curva in the top 5. Very close stuff indeed for the run in towards round 6 today. And taking a look at the regulations at large, much the same as what we've had for the last couple of rounds here. And that is about to change for round 7 as we'll get back in on what started the season off, the 3x40 layout coming up next, I believe, yes, next week. But now, though, we're on the last couple of minutes of free practice with 30 minutes of qualifying to follow and 120 minutes of racing. 2 mandatory pit stops for fuel, 25-second fixed window. Now, this was only introduced after Watkins Glen, where we saw Wright's victory on an unorthodox strategy. Pit window at 90 minutes so far. Taking a look back onto the grid here, with only about 4 minutes left to go in the session, taking a look at the current timing order. Now, this has undergone somewhat of a reset because we had a bit of server troubles in the last 20 or so minutes. That's been hopefully resolved for today, but what we can see at this time, 2:16.335 by Christian LeBay. Now, we've seen him reach into times of a 2:15.7. Now, that is, and I believe, over the world record via Simbot. And speaking of, we'll be getting a look at a qualifying predictions chart into quali today from Simbot, courtesy of the data we've been able to scrape up for this round of the championship. Before that, though, talks on balance of performance, courtesy of pitskill.io. Aston Martin with 40 kilos off of the V12 Vantage, so that'll be fantastic news for Karina Stinson, the sole user of the V12 Vantage in this championship. As for Bentley, they line up with 18 kilos off of factory weight, so for David Tanguay, that's fantastic news also. Mercedes-AMG with 9 kilos off and Lamborghini with 5. Aston Martin's V8 Vantage losing only a single kilo. Taking a look into the positives here. Porsche with a single kilo on, BMW with 3, Ferrari with 4, Nissan with 6, McLaren with 6, and Ford with 20. We'll have more data to hand as well on Lexus, of course. They are somewhat of an anomaly on this grid with the return of Zalan Such. He made his return to the championship after round 5 at the Red Bull Ring, where he had a brilliant time there at the home of the Austrian Grand Prix. Right now lines up second fastest, but we did see him a lot closer on the timing charts towards the end of the original free practice session. So things will still be ramping up for the talks into qualifying, which as of right now, we're just 2.5 minutes away from. We also have a stacked out news segment coming up, and we're really excited to talk more about some of the recent developments in the world of motorsports. But looking in right now, David Tanguay up and around Eau Rouge and Radion, coming up into qualifying as well. Over the first flying laps will be our track tour of the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps, but I'm sure many motorsport fans tuning in today do not need many introductions to this legendary venue. So currently out on track at the moment, we see David Tanguay, George Todd and Charlie Harker up in the pro category. And for the AMS at the moment, we see Richard Cecil, the current championship leader for the AMS, and he only finds himself at the end of this session, by looks of things, having a glance there, 110,000. So for Joey Fisher, second fastest and currently in the paddock. After having made his debut not long ago, Cedric Grenier-Massey, third fastest for the AMS. He's ahead of Matthew Bedensky, also a new driver for this later part of the season. He lines up in a Division 4th, 10th overall. Veldkamp, Division 5th, 11th overall. Also out on track now, we've just got wind of another pro car out, the number 55, Stefan Nikolai, with Mercedes-AMG. Down through then the run of things at the Curb of Paul Frere, out through Stavelot into the Curb of Paul Frere now at turn 16. And one major article about this track that defines it among its contemporaries is its size, its enormity compared to other circuits. I mean, this is a track about 2 times the size of a track like Brands Hatch or a track like Zolder. And it is a remarkable work of engineering here. Originally started its life as just the streets surrounding the region of Stavelot in Belgium, and this was a street circuit in the 1920s, was one of 3 major tracks to be introduced in mainland Europe in the early 1920s, with this being the first, the other one in 1922 being the Autodromo Nazionale de Monza, and the year after that saw the introduction of the Circuit de la Sarthe, otherwise Le Mans. The 1920s were an impactful decade for motorsports, much as they were for the 1950s thereafter the Second World War, which saw the rise of circuits like Brands Hatch and Silverstone. You see here with Nikolai, third fastest and absolutely slingshots over Eau Rouge and Radion. We'll be seeing plenty of drives like that over the course of today. Of course, the most iconic section of FIA Grade 1 tarmac in the world. I'd say that really doesn't go with much competition behind it. Not sure many candidates can line up to the same kind of infamy that this section of the track has. This perilous ascent uphill where the drivers will just have to keep their foot in the throttle and a firm belief they'll come out the other side facing the right way up through this uphill chicane. The Formula Ones will take this flat out. The GT3s will be definitely trying to match them, but to a limited amount of success, as we saw there. Dupois having to back off and cut through the chicane at the end of free practice. So we're just around the corner from the start of qualifying. 30 minutes of qualifying staggered, if I'm not mistaken. 15 minutes on either side. I could be wrong about that one, though. That might also be just some bleed over from the regs from the GT4 Pro-Am Cup, but we'll wait to see. We see George Todd now peeling in at the end of his session. 5th fastest for the number 12 Ferrari. In terms of what we got coming up this weekend, this is one among them. Only 2 rounds for Saturday and Sunday alike. So we've got today, of course, the World Series Round 6 here in Season 1 here at Spa. Tomorrow evening, 6:30 p.m. BST. Set that on your calendars. The season finale of the NLRL Sunday League Season 5. Charlie Harker down to the line from 6th at the end of this session. Back on to then the talks of qualifying. 30-minute qualifying session underway. We see immediate movement then from the championship lead. Christian Lebay, leader of the pro category, scrambles out to the track. Up in front of him, there's Alan Such. These two have quickly formed back up on the rivalry that started the season off in Silverstone at the 3x40 at round 1 of the championship. It's wonderful to see these two back on the track again. Of course, we did get a little inkling of that in Red Bull Ring last round at round 5 of the championship. Behind them, you can see just off in the distance the faint blue glow there of Euro Titans Endurance's Brooklyn Donkin, the number 17, on his way down through to Lecombe and Melmedy. We'll go on board with Zalan Such as we see even more movement from the pit lane. So unlike the GT4 Pro-Am Cup, if I'm not mistaken, this is not a staggered qualifying format. As you can see here, Everaldo dos Santos on his way down through Lecombe and Melmedy. It's worth noting some connectivity issues for a few drivers. I believe the 413 was having some trouble there at that time. And that would be Jonas Franke. You can see he's all the way in the red there on the ping warning for his Porsche, so that is one thing to keep into consideration here, that maybe some of the European drivers will be struggling today. As we are led to believe at the moment, the majority of the Black Nitro Racing team are German, so they are tuning in from European servers and trying to connect into a server that's based in North America. We've seen, though, drivers from even further out be able to connect just fine. We've had quite a few drivers over on the GT4 Pro-Am Cup, another series you can catch live here on TRTN from the folks at Competizione Performance League. And we have plenty of drivers tune in from there, from Australia. So they're also going transcontinental from Oceania to North America, and they're doing just fine. So it often does bleed down to just a case-by-case basis. I mean, at the same point here, you can see there is a high ping warning for Richard Cecil, an American driver competing in an American league on an American server. Down through Blanchemont. On board then with Zalan Such, he'll be our unofficial tour guide of the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps, a fantastic venue. So, and this is where the curious part about it comes up here for the GT configuration, as we'll call it for this. Not only longer pit lane, which is going to stress importance on those pit stops, but this is where the finish line is. The start line is around the corner. So we've started the flying lap now here with Zalan Such on the run down through to turn 1 at La Source. And we'll actually start the race on the run down here through to turn 2. As we stay on board then with that thunderous sound from the number 45 Lexus as he barrels down through turn 2. Screaming up the hill then, turns 3, 4 and 5. Eau Rouge and Radion. Flat out there from the 45 Lexus. Now onto the Kemmel Straight. Out through turn 6. And this is where heavy dividends will be paid for Ford and Lexus alike, two phenomenally fast manufacturers in the straights, and this section will definitely showcase that rather well. Down through Lecombe, turn 7, 8 and 9. Turn 9 here, Melmedy. Now on the run down towards Bruxelles, sometimes also alternatively called Rivage here at turn 10, this downhill open hairpin right. Now into the no-name corner, turn 11.
Heading up through to Puon now. This double apex left-hander here at turn 12 can be taken as one continuous left. We see in Formula 1 they can take this section flat out. The GTs won't have the kind of luxury they possess. They'll still be trying to keep this as flat as they can. Down through to turn 13, now heavy onto the brakes into Campus. Turn 14. Easy to run out wide of this section, as you can see there. There's an area that almost grabs the car as it exits through turn 14. A little bit of lag there, down through Stavolo at turn 15. Now the curb of Paul Frere, turn 16. In towards Blanchimont, another very fast section of the track here in Sector 3. These two left-handers, drivers will be daring to take both of them flat out here, as we see from Zalan Suchi comes screaming around turn 18, but it's a bit of a bump from him there. Forces him out wide, in towards turn 19 and 20 here, the bus stop chicane. At the end of this flying lap at the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps. Connection appears to be a bit spotty today, but we're hoping to get through all of this in due course. Down to the line then goes Zalan Such, the first time onto the charts for today, and it's a 2:16.420. And taking a look at those qualifying predictions, he is predicted fastest and very close as it would stand to his predicted time so far. Labe predicted in second, with Sergio Hernandez set to join us hopefully today, the exclusive esports driver joining us for what could very well be a third place bout in qualifying. Kyle Jenkins predicted at fourth, Harker fifth, and a new driver to the field, Alex Page, in 6th. Didier Potvin in 7th. Richard Cecil 8th. Cedric Grenier-Masse in 9th. And Matthew Badensky in 10th. We see as the times come rolling through, Brooklyn Donkin was momentarily in 2nd. That's now 3rd, courtesy of Charlie Harku, who takes the 2nd fastest time of the session so far. Number 6 across the line a moment ago, Cedric Grenier-Masse, fastest of the AM cars. Number 35 coming to the line, though. That's Didier Potvin with Ford, goes 5th fastest. Number 91 nearby, so here comes Ivan Sanchez. Holkianos Motorsports, of course, the team's leaders for the AM category. Down to the line he goes, only 3rd fastest. From behind him was the 616. Andrew Veldkamp goes in behind him for a division 4th and 7th overall. More times rolling in as we speak. Among them was the number 800, Karina Stinson with Aston Martin. Now was momentarily 5th, now 6th in division after the arrival there of Danny Felix. Number 14 and number 54 nearest to the line. Neither of them having yet set times. Number 55 nearest to the line. We go to look in here. Stefan Nicolai with Mercedes. Down to the line he goes and onto the timing charts, 3rd fastest. From behind him we see Joey Fisher. As it would appear though, the 59, no time set. Same story I believe there for that 888 behind him. That being Ruben Pereira with Porsche. More times coming in though onto the timing charts. Badensky 3rd fastest in category. The number 12 and the number 65, I believe they were across the line with him. So the number 12 was George Todd, no time set. But the number 65, Sergio Belda, as it would stand there, ranks in division 7th, 11th overall. Nearest to the line, number 45, the man who started this session off, Zalan Such. With Velocity Racing, McLaren, not McLaren, sorry, Lexus. Weird McLaren, I would definitely say. Down to the line goes the Lexus. 2:16.420, so still holds short of his predicted fastest time. Approaching the line from behind him, though, is the 119. Here comes Labe. Where does he find himself on the charts? 185 thousandths off. Donkin behind. From 5th, goes 4th. Number 30 nearby, so here comes the Bentley of David Tanguay. 2nd in the championship in the pros. Down to the line, 6th fastest at the end of that first lap. Finds himself 3/10ths off of Nicolai. Jonas Franke behind him now for 7th. Number 5 and number 6 nearest to the line. So we go to catch on board here with Richard Cecil, leader of the AM Championship with Porsche. Heading down towards the line. Where does he find himself? Sadly, no time set. Number 6 from behind him, Grenier-Masse. Same, actually, I believe it might have been an improvement there. I want to say by about 200ths there for him. Unless I was misreading things the first time I checked that interval time. But was originally, I think, 3.447, now 3.427. Number 91 nearby. We see here for Ivan Sanchez. Division 5th at the moment. Across the line he goes. Stays there for the time being. Number 39 approaching from behind. That's Christophe Dupois with Lexus. Goes up and ahead of him there for 5th. Danny Felix coming to the line now. And the number 985 goes 3rd. Number 14 across the line a moment ago. Everaldo dos Santos fastest for the AMS. 8th overall. That's now 9th of the introduction of Wright. Of course, race winner from 2 rounds ago at Watkins Glen. Brilliant drive from the Lexus earlier this season. Saw his first win in Competizione Performance League. Now 8th in the session so far. And we've seen from him the frustrations over the last 2 weeks with the change in regulations now making the strategy that he used to perfect level there in Watkins Glen sort of snatched away from him. Sort of a slap on the wrist, it feels like, for him. It's not hard to see from his point of view where that stands. Because, of course, he's come into this championship here. He had a very cunning strategy. He's got a sort of trick up his sleeve here. I wouldn't say what he did was even remotely illegal. It was totally within the rule book. But then it's a case where the regs change overnight. And now going into that next race in the Red Bull Ring, he just couldn't find the same kind of strategy out of it. And it was somewhat of a shame, I'd say, considering it did have a huge impact on that two-stop strategy. I think what it proved at the time to race control was unless there's preventative measures in place, that two-stop strategy can very easily be thwarted, because it was incredibly clever what he did earlier in the season to get his race win. And that's the thinking man's game. And it seems that in the recent reg waves, that's a case that race control doesn't really want that happening. They don't want drivers scrambling for a last-minute pit stop. They want things to play out a little bit more by the books, and that's why they introduced the rules that they did. But you can see where he sort of had a bit of growing animosity around those rules. But right now, 8th fastest for Wright, still holding strong. At the front of the field, still Alexis here. Zalan Such, number 45, with Velocity Racing. Up and ahead of Christian Lebay by about 1/4 of a second here. 250 thousandths to be more precise. Charlie Harker makes 3rd place with Brooklyn Donkin currently 4th, and David Tangway in the top 5. In the AM category, we saw not long ago across the lineup by just under 0.2 of a second over Everaldo dos Santos. Richard Cecil now fastest in the AM division, 10th overall in the session. Dos Santos 2nd, and Grenier Massey on the AM division podium here in qualifying after what has been the first 10 minutes or so. Still plenty of time left to go before the end of this session. 19.5 minutes. Nearest to the line, number 55. For Stefan Nicolai, stays 7th across the line a moment ago. Number 72, approaching the line, Charlie Harker. Couldn't find any grounds there. Joey Fisher now goes, I believe, yes, 3rd fastest in the AMs, up and ahead of Cedric Grenier Massey. Ferrari, having recently entered that top 10 in the AM Championship, Fisher is doing well here in the second half as we head in through to round 6. Number 54 back in the paddock there, right back in the pit lane after some what appeared to be trouble. He goes level on time with Brooklyn Donkin for 4th place. Those two down to the 1,000th level. And then when you check between themselves and Charlie Harker in front, you have 3 cars divided by 300ths of a second. So as always here in the World Series, super close qualifying to be had so far, and we're not even halfway through the session. Still about 3.5 minutes before we're close. Number 17 coming across the line. Brooklyn Donkin breaks away from what was that 3-way split, now puts himself 3rd up and ahead of Harker and Wright. And the number 17. As it would stand there, he's about having a glance in about 800, actually just a little under 7,500ths. 75 thousandths, I should say, of a second. 7,500ths would be, I think, 750 thousandths of a second. So 75 milliseconds between Donkin and Harker for control of 3rd place. And that makes about 105 thousandths of a second between himself and Wright. So still 3 drivers by just over 1/10 of a second between each other for control of the last of those podiums. A very, very close second row indeed. Nearest to the line, the 113 across the line. Kyle Jenkins jumps in between the 2 leading AM cars of Dos Santos and Cecil for an overall 11th in the number 113. Nearest to the line from behind him, number 985, Danny Felix, currently division 5th in the AMs, 15th overall. As he hits the line here, does he find himself a position up? Not this time around. The number 616 does, though, as Andrew Veldkamp goes division 5th, forcing Felix down to a division 6th. Number 55 heading to the line here. Here comes Stefan Nicolai, jumps up to 4th place there, now puts himself in the conversation of a fight for 3rd place, as now he finds himself having a glance here, 45 thousandths away from Brooklyn Donkin. So now that marks 4 drivers that are within just over 1/10 of a second from one another for that 3rd place contention. Number 35 nearest to the line, Didier Potvin, upper position, now goes into division 7th. Number 65, nearest to the line. Sergio Belda stays where he is for the time being. Nearest to the line appears to be, I want to say yes, no, it's the number 800, Karina Stinson. 22nd on the field, stays there after that last lap just gone. We see him behind. Everaldo dos Santos goes fastest for the AMS, goes 10th overall in the session. The number 114 had away a free position there, as dos Santos was momentarily 9th. It was Ben Cheeseman to force him to the back of that top 10, as he now himself gets pushed down to 9th with the introduction. Having a glance in there, having crossed the line a moment ago, I believe, yes, was George Todd, now 3rd fastest in the session. So that continued fight for 3rd still rages on here, about 50 seconds out from the halfway of this qualifying session. Still plenty of time to go. What an opening half we've had here in the second half of the championship. Number 12 leaping up through Eau Rouge and Radion onto the Kemmel. Now, Ferrari will struggle in the straightaways here, whether it's on the run down through to Blanchimont or the run here along the Kemmel straight. They will struggle up against BMW, Ford and Lexus. So it's rather inconvenient at this time that Todd finds himself surrounded by all 3 of those manufacturers, with Mercedes just for good measure. But we've seen George Todd is a very, very capable driver, especially in that pairing between himself and Ferrari. I have it on good authority. He'll do very, very well in this race. But what he needs to do now is just hold on to that second row start. It doesn't really matter if it's 3rd or 4th. Of course, he'd like it to be 3rd. Strategically speaking, just a second row is all that would take for him, because we've seen him to have some great starts in the past. Today could look to be no exemption to that rule. 15 minutes then left to go in the session so far. Whilst we stay on board here with George Todd, a glance forward to the future for this series. Of course, now starting the second half of the championship proper here on April 25th. We'll be heading to Barcelona next week for the second of our 3x40s. The first for the second half of the championship, I should say, on May 2nd. Thereafter, we go to Bathurst on May 9th for another 2-hour race, and then another 3x40 in the Hungaroring. That'll be for the penultimate round of the championship on May 16th, May 23rd. The season finale then at the Nürburgring for another 2-hour race. So as it would stand right now, we're looking down the barrel of 9 more races across 5 rounds before the season is out. And today is the start of that second half, the final push for some. And with 2 championships on the line for the drivers and 2 for the teams, I should say, with that split category between the AMs and pros. 4 championships hang in the balance here with 5 rounds left to go of the World Series. And I'd say we're still far from having the conclusive answers as to who could emerge champion. George Todd in that last lap is getting closer to the front row. And recently we've seen Zalan Such expand the gap now to 437 thousandths between himself and Labbe. Dangerously close to a high 2:15. Right now 2:16.055, the fastest lap of this qualifying session. Conditions are more than amicable for the drivers today. 24 degrees on track, 17 ambient, and no imminent threat of rain. So for Zalan Such, this could very well represent a real leg up back into the championship charge. He's 3rd in the championship at the moment after his hiatus, but it's worth noting how he was able to stay in 3rd for so long, despite the fact that he skipped out the majority of this championship after round 1, re-emerged in round 5, was because he competed in that 3x40 at Silverstone and won all 3 of those events. That's the same points distribution we have at the moment as the current races themselves. So it's effectively a fire sale for points. It's a 3x40 opportunity, 3 times the point scoring opportunities that we have in a standard race. That's what makes these 3 rounds that we'll have it, with round 1, round 7 and round 9 being such impactful parts of that championship charge. If Zalan Such can get back onto the same form he carried into this championship for the run out of today and into next week, I'd have it on good authority to see him not only back up to 2nd, but into the title charge when we head towards the final couple of rounds. Right now, though, it's stiff competition because Labbe has been on upwards momentum for the majority of the season now, with his first race win of the season coming up in round 2, and then last round in round 5 picked back up where he left off for his 2nd win of the season. And that seems to be a story almost perfectly mirrored for Richard Cecil in the AMS, because when you consider that he had a pretty solid start to the season,
And then after round 2, entered somewhat of a drought with the introduction of Everaldo dos Santos, and that rivalry between these two is still incredibly stiff. We now see that Cecil is back up to the fastest for the AM cars, the red label cars on the timing order to your left-hand side. And it's a case here where Cecil's now back onto winning form after a 2-race-long drought from rounds 3 and 4 in Imola and Watkins Glen, with Clemens Young and Wright winning overall in the pros. It was dos Santos to win in the AMs on both occasions, and now after Red Bull Ring, he's back on winning form. So it'll be an interesting story to see. Plenty of resurgence drives from 3 different major parties here, 2 of which in the pros, 1 from the AMs. But only one of them is challenging for the lead. The other 2 are still leading that championship. Consistent results from LeBay and from Cecil have led them to be the championship leaders across both drivers' championship categories. So for Zalan Sucha's case, this is one where he looks to challenge that throne. And those few weeks away, whatever he was getting up to during that time has not stifled his ability to get out on track and lay in these unfathomably fast times in the Lexus RCF. It is a real breath of fresh air to see another driver do this after so long. The last driver I think we've seen do this consistently was, I think it was Jason Bush in the NLRL Sunday League Season 2 when he went on his championship charge with Lexus, dominated the season in this old school car, one of the longest prevailing designs in GT racing. And I mean that in the most literal of senses, because the Lexus RCF that was introduced in 2015 is really not too far apart from the Lexus RCF that is still competing today in the World Endurance Championship in 2026, 11 years after its introduction. Now, Toyota is looking to replace this car with the GR-GT, and we know already their ambitions are clear and defined, and I have no doubt that they'll succeed on their efforts. But what it would mean is, on the American crowd, where Toyota's influence has been felt through Lexus as a brand, it could very well mean the end of the RCF. As there have already been rumors aplenty swirling over the fact that GR-GT could get a Lexus rebrand and be sold in North America. And that would bring about the death of what has been, I'd say, in the modern history of GT racing, one of the most iconic cars going. The RCF is the sort of the cockroach of GT3. You just can't kill it. Now, if we want to get more literal and talk the longest prevailing design in GT racing, I mean, yes, it's the Porsche 911. This has been around since the 1950s. And it's the same core ethos that has defined the 901 in the early to mid 50s into the 60s that now defines the 992 in the current day. This driver knows plenty enough about Porsches here. Richard Cecil has been racing in the real world for decades with Porsche. Now racing in the virtual world in the 992 GT3R. I'd still hold that high regard that we are looking here with the Porsche 911. And I would say this and stand on that claim to the end of time. This is the most popular sports car of all time. This is an instantly recognizable machine. Nearest to the line then, we'll go to catch on board with drivers still hot lapping at the moment. And it looked like trouble here for Karina Stinson. Now she's back into the pit lane, so the 119's nearest. We'll see for LeBay. He's brought the gap back in now south of 4/10. 372 thousandths between himself and Zalan Such. Can he find more of an improvement there? Not on this lap, but he's got 8 minutes left to go in the session, so roughly in the talks of just, I believe, over 5 laps there with the overlap that he's had. Actually, no, I think it's going to be about 4 laps that he's got. Thinking about it now, between himself and the end of qualifying. There's one thing we understand already about LeBay is if he doesn't get it in qualifying, you can more than guarantee he'll have a much better go of it in the race. And that's sort of what's defined his successes across so many different championships, both on Competizione Performance League and also over on the NLRL Sunday League and on the HCCL Multiclass, and multiple championships we've covered. To see him as the champion of that, it's been a case here for LeBay that he's just got all-round very, 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 very good pace. I mean, he was breaching for world records on the run-in towards today. It's a pity we're not seeing that replicated here in qualifying, but of course that is really hitting for the ceiling of performance this game can give and these cars can allow for.
I don't think that, given the amount of time we have in this session compared to the hours these drivers have been in the free practice session before today, that we're going to see something along those lines. Of course, never say never on the prospect of seeing a 2:15 by the end of this session. Now, the world record, I believe, was a 2:15.8 for BOP lap times. And I say BOP lap times because it has to be cars weighed down under pit skill BOP. So not LFM, because that's different weight intervals for Lexus and Ford. But I believe for the pit skill BOP GTs at the moment, I think that was the case that LePay did actually, before today's broadcast break, into that a 2:15 point. I think it was 7.98. So remarkably close from the 1:19. I do see, though, that he's slowing down in through to Blanchimont. He's trying to give himself the space. He's got the 616 out in front of him. That's Andrew Veldkamp, and he's also just caught wind of the 39. Rearing up towards him at this time. You see there in the background, Christophe Dubois, and the number 39. And now the 119 gets going down through to the bus stop chicane. Good evening to everyone joining us in the Twitch chat as well. We can see a few of you in there at the moment. This is definitely looking to be an interesting race coming up around the corner. About 5 minutes coming up on left of qualifying for these drivers. They've had upwards of 25 minutes so far in what is this 30-minute qualifying session here in round 6 of the championship. And looking in towards things today for the talks of the pit lane, this is going to be a rather interesting track to have those 2 mandatory pit stops on, because as we know it right now here on ACC, this is the longest pit lane of any circuit, because it combines not only the Grand Prix section of the pits, where we'll cruise through and not use any of those paddocks that normally store the Formula 1 cars in time for the Belgian Grand Prix. We'll be using not only that, but also going all the way around on the inside of La Source and down in towards the GT paddock that runs parallel to Eau Rouge and Raidillon and releases on the inside of that corner out through to turn 6. And that's often led to a few issues in the past with drivers rejoining from out of the pits. It does come up on you very, very quickly. You've got drivers, albeit they've got a bit of a running start, but they're coming out onto the fastest section of the track. And that has often led to incidents in the past. We're hoping to maybe try and find a driver making their way down through the paddock, but I don't think we'll have many opportunities with drivers being able to teleport back today. Dos Santos on his way down through to turn 19 and 20. The number 14 has been a sensational presence on this field since his late entry into the first half of the championship. Right now, only finds himself distant from Seesaw by about 200, and looking there, 262,000 between himself and the number 5 at the forefront of the AMS. We see a very clean split down the middle here between the pros and the AMS. A very clear line drawn in the sand there between the 10th and 11th fastest times of today. Down through to Eau Rouge and Raidillon. You can see there leaving the paddock is Joey Fisher, currently 4th fastest, and this is the exiting line. They come out onto the track from here and albeit he was a little further on the inside, but they get released onto turn 6. Now, bear in mind, when you consider how fast the drivers will be heading up through turn 6, you can see here from Kyle Jenkins, this is turns 3, 4, and 5, Eau Rouge and Raidillon, slingshots up and around. Now, he's well north of 120 miles an hour, and you can see how close that gets to be trouble when you see the BMW from Brooklyn Donkin in 5th place emerged from behind him. There's split seconds involved in this, and drivers obviously don't want to hop off the racing line. It's the unstoppable force meets the immovable object, and at these speeds, it can be very, very dangerous. Out through Melmedy. Jenkins, though, is absolutely flying in Sector 1. Looking to try and hunt down his fellow teammate at the 5-star esports team. They line up on the 5th row right now. Ben Cheeseman 9th, and Kyle Jenkins in 10th. Down through to the bus stop chicane then. Dalan Such 2:16.005, the new fastest lap of the session. Still only a few milliseconds from a 2:15. Is it possible in this session? One does wonder. Only 2 drivers seem close to getting it, but it's worth pointing out, while yes, the gap is considerably large between Such and LeBay in terms of these kind of qualifyings here in the World Series. It's worth noting the gaps between the drivers in terms of relative positions here, because you're looking at a gap between LeBay and Todd, two of the Malwar racing cars, number 119 and number 12. They're separate by about 200 and looking here, 218 thousandths of a second between each other for second and third. Then you look in behind to see here with Wright and Donkin, they're separate by 182 thousandths of a second. Then you see in behind even closer, Stefan Nikolai to Charlie Harker are separate by 300ths of a second, 30 milliseconds to be more precise. Then up in front, Donkin from Nikolai is only separate by 65 thousandths of a second. So it's incredibly close. We've got in the general spread of that top 10, it's easy to not see that when you're only looking at the gaps up at the front, when it's in the 10ths here or getting up towards the seconds when you're looking at the gap from the leader. Across the line, David Tanguay goes 6th fastest and now puts himself only a single 100th away from Brooklyn Donkin. And he rounds on to the last of his flying laps available to him today before the end of qualifying. Also across the line a moment ago was the 119, but LeBay is pulling to one side. That could very well, yes, he's throwing in the towel. So Zalan Such, as far as we know, has got pole position secured. 2:16.005 is the time to beat. There are still a few drivers out on track as we see assaulting those curbs down through the curb of Paul Frere. George Todd is throwing absolutely everything into this lap. Whether this is a scramble to get one more lap in before the end of this qualifying session or an attempt to try and break into the front row, either are applicable here with a drive like this. It's absolutely feral from the Ferrari. On a run out from Blanchimont in towards the bus stop chicane at turns 19 and 20. What can the number 12 make of it? He does have enough time here for one more lap if that was his objective, but we'll see exactly what this time yields. And it's looking already very fast for George Todd. Down to the line goes the number 12. And it is an improvement, so he is getting closer, but that is all he dare find. Only a single 10th away. Across the line from behind him, Ben Schiessman still 9th. Nearest to the line then, Everaldo dos Santos. It's now or never for the AM Division pole between himself and Richard Cecil. A gap currently marked up between the pair of them of having a glance in here, about 200 and having a look, 62 thousandths of a second. Down through to turn 19 and 20 then. Can he find it? 262 milliseconds between himself and pole position in the AMs. Down to the line goes Dos Santos. Can McLaren do it? Down across the line, sadly not on this day. So Richard Cecil secures away the AM Division pole. Number 59's coming in, so never say never on the chances here from Joey Fisher. Across the line stays 4th. From behind him, the number 65. That being Sergio Belda, 18th overall in the session. Number 17 coming to the line, Brooklyn Donkin. Only a single 100th clear from Tanguay across the line. Will stay that way for 5th place. Those two having wrapped up control of the 3rd row between BMW and Bentley. Number 616 nearest to the line, Andrew Veldkamp, currently Division 6th in the AMs. Down to the line he goes. Can he break into the top 5? Across the line he goes. Did find an improvement, but not enough for position. Didier Potvin from behind him. Down through to turn 20. Across the line, he does find the improvement there into 5th in division. Up and ahead of Cedric Grenier-Massey. Now down to Division 6 at the end of qualifying. The nearest car to the line, I believe, just invalidated there. So Ben Schiessman will still hold on to a 9th place start. Kyle Jenkins in 10th. And Jonas Franke in 11th. And a sudden turnaround at the end of this qualifying session. Zalan Such on pole position in the pros. Richard Cecil on pole position in the AMs. We'll get a full grid read in a moment's time. But before we do, getting a look into what is a stacked news segment. I've been thoroughly looking forward to talking more about this at this time. Taking a look into everything so far. We've got news from across Formula 1 and from the World Rally Championship. Plenty to talk about, so let's get into it. First off then, the Turkish Grand Prix is coming back for 2027. We will return to Istanbul Park for the first time in 6 years. The last visit was in 2021 and saw a win by Valtteri Bottas with Max Verstappen and Sergio Perez behind for that podium. That was the first time the world ever saw the infamous Red Bull white livery. That stood in place of the Japanese Grand Prix that year, which is why that livery, originally inspired by their partnership with Honda, did not make an awful lot of sense, but it was still a fantastic venue to go to, and with great news to see it come back. It'll also be joining along with Portimao to return on next year's calendar in Formula 1. Looking in the World Rally Championship at the time of recording in the Islas Canarias Rally, Toyota lead 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5 in Rally 1 on their way into day 3. As it currently stands, Johan Rossell still leads in Rally 2 with Lancia, trailing on his first victory with the team earlier in the season. Looking in the World Rally Championship furthermore, we have a brand new manufacturer coming in for 2027. The RFEDA and RMC Motorsport are set to join Rally 1 in 2027 under the guise of WRT Rally 1 Spain. That's their official name so far. They'll be the first Spanish manufacturer to develop a top-level rally car since Seat with the Cordoba WRC in 1999, marking up a gap here of some 26 years in difference. Actually, 28 years, sorry, I should say. Looking then away from the World Rally Championship, and our last bit of news comes from the All Japan Rally Championship. Subaru has finally revealed their long-awaited, and we saw the concept images of it for some time, BRZ rally car, what has now been called the Boxer Rally Type Z, will compete at round 3 of the All Japan Rally Championship at the Yuho Rally Asuka in Nara Prefecture. That'll be driven, as far as we know, by Toshihiro Arai, and also features allegedly a 2.4-litre turbo Boxer 4 engine, a 6-speed sequential, and all-wheel drive. It's been closest modelled after Group JN1, the top level of the All Japan Rally Championship, which is currently comprised 90% of Rally 2 cars from Toyota and also Skoda. So Subaru are effectively, and this is, you know, take a bit of a pinch of salt with this, but they are effectively developing a Rally 2 equivalent BRZ. We'll be thoroughly excited to see how this gets on later on in May at the Yuho Rally Asuka in Nara. It's a tarmac rally coming up next month at round 3 of the All Japan Rally Championship, and it's been sort of the basis for a lot of big Japanese manufacturers as this great experimental platform to compete on the national stage. And where could these designs go next? Of course, this is a big change for Subaru. Normally, their rallying endeavors were covered by Vermont Sports Car over in North America, but this is the first time in a long time they've committed to a project like this in rally as a factory unit. This is going to be rather interesting to see more on that as it progresses into next month. Looking at the grid then for today, a minute and a half before the formation lap here for round 6 of the Competizione Performance League World Series. Zalan Such on pole position with Christian Lebay in 2nd and George Todd in 3rd. Wright in 4th, Donkin 5th, Tanguay in 6th, Nikolai 7th, Harker 8th, Cheeseman 9th, and Jenkins in 10th. Believe we've had more issues there for Jonas Franke. I believe a disconnect. And not quite sure where he is, but that does promote Richard Cecil now to 11th at the forefront of the AM division. He starts ahead of championship rival Everaldo dos Santos as he's been on the rise, now making his way closer and closer to the front of that field, but still his main rivalry, Cecil, it comes from Holcianos Motorsports with Ivan Sanchez and Sergio Belda. They start much further down than they'd like to in this session. Dos Santos overall 12th. Danny Felix starts on a division pole there. Not a division pole, sorry, division podium, 3rd place. And 13th overall. Joey Fisher, 14th. Didier Potvin in 15th. Cedric Grenier-Masse in 15th. Andrew Veldkamp, 17th. Sergio Belda in 18th. JM Quito in 19th. And Matthew Badensky in 20th. Ruben Pereira in 21st. Ivan Sanchez, 22nd. Christophe Dupois in 23rd. And Karina Stinson in 24th. On board then with Zalan Such as we get into the talks of the formation lap here for round 6 of the Competizione Performance League World Series, brought to you by Malwar Transport and live exclusively on TRTN. The man on pole, Zalan Such. He's been a formidable talent on this grid, and it's wonderful to see him back after his return to the series last round at the Red Bull Ring. Finished 2nd in that race in the pros. In behind the driver now, he starts up and ahead of, for this race, Christian Lebay, the Pro Championship leader. Some background on that 119 as well, of course, for those who may not be so familiar with Competizione Performance League. We've seen out of him on screen at the moment, and this is just of what we've been able to see, so there could definitely be more to this, but what we've seen out of him in just Competizione Performance League alone, 2 GT4 championships, and also the Jaguar GT3 Revival Championship. He also had a great time over in the Triple Crown Enduro Series over the Christmas break in 2025. And as we've also seen over on NLRL, and the Sunday League was the first ever champion of that series, having done so without a single race win in his time with Aston Martin, a bid that would last 4 seasons before swapping to Ford. And now we see the new era from that 119, and he's a stark presence on this grid. 2 race wins to Zalan Such's 3. The two rivals at the front of the field. Now, there is still worth considering David Tanguay in part of all of this. He's second in the championship, ahead of Zalan Such on your screens at the moment, but behind Christian Lebay in the championship standings. We've got news there from George Todd. He's in the paddock for the race start. Now, this is quite a surprising turn of events there. It was such a confident qualifying session there from George Todd. To hear the news that he is now starting from the pit lane is gut-wrenching for the Ferrari. We see here towards the back of the pro crowd. This is Charlie Harker, Ben Cheeseman and Kyle Jenkins. 3 cars from the 5-star esports team. Harker, part of the academy unit in the white, gold and red Mustang. The 2 mainstays behind him, the 114 and the 113, with Lamborghini and Ferrari. We see here from Christian Lebay starting in behind Zalan Such. So this is going to be a very exciting front row to watch on the run up through Eau Rouge and Radion. Now, as to mention before, we don't actually start the race on the run down towards La Source like most races around here at the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps. No, we start off of the exit of turn 1 down parallel to the pit lane entry for GTs, or the sort of start of the pit lane for the GTs down off of turn 2. So just before the run into Eau Rouge and Radion, it means we carry less speed on the run up through Eau Rouge and Radion for the first time. What that means for these GTs, where they're already struggling to take this area flat out, is this will be their one and only opportunity in this race to go flat up through Eau Rouge and Radion without any fear of running out wide or having to cut the track. Anything thereafter, they're going to have to approach every lap with a degree of hesitancy, like this could very well be the one to take them off of the scoring charts. In terms of overtaking opportunities, plenty among them on these open sections here. If you can stay in the slipstream for long enough, there'll be an overtaking zone down at turns 19 and 20. We've seen drivers get side by side off the exit of Blanchemont. In terms of Sector 1, it's far and few between in terms of braking zone-oriented overtaking spots. Your really only chances right now are La Source and Le Com. Otherwise, it'll be slipstream-based overtakes to be found up through Eau Rouge and Radion, and then all the way up through the Kemmel Straight. We also just got word there, Matthew Badensky is now starting from the pit lane after a disconnect in the 505. So now that's 2 pit lane starts, 1 from George Todd, and that's got to be gut-wrenching for him because he was on such a good qualifying session, was going to start right up on that second row alongside Wright, who now has much easier access to the front row. Making our way then down towards turn 19 and 20. Here at the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps, the home of the Belgian Grand Prix, the largest of the Grade 1 circuits. A circuit with over a century of history now lays rise to round 6 of the World Series, and they make their way out from turn 20 up towards turn 1. Now, this isn't where the race will start for these drivers. 2 hours of racing set to follow here. And to remind you of what the regulations are looking like, 2 hours of racing, 2 mandatory pit stops and a 90-minute pit window. So that means it opens 15 minutes from the race start and then 15 minutes from the end of the race. 2 stops for fuel at a 25-second fixed window. Making their way down through turn 1 at La Source begins now the lineup run in towards turns 2, 3 and 4 here at the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps. 24 cars in all, 22 on the track, 2 from the pit lane. So that makes, as it currently stands, 11 either side of which, and 2 from the pits down to the line here for round 6 of the World Series by Competizione Performance League. And we're green and racing here in Stavelot. A great start then from that front row. Zalan Such breaks away from Lebay to put this single file for the run up through Eau Rouge and Radion. For the first time, you can see in the background is David Tanguay going side by side with Brooklyn Donkin. We see here from Charlie Harker, gets up into the mix of it. Watch this now, up through turn 6. He's in the storm of it for the run of the top 5. Watching as a storm of steel ensues on the run out from turn 6 up towards turn 7 here at Le Com and Melmedy. Watching on board with Charlie Harker to see the fight going on in front of him. Stefan Nicolai filters in front with Brooklyn Donkin up in front of him. David Tanguay falls in behind Wright and could very well lose position out here to Brooklyn Donkin. We saw the Mercedes step all the way out wide. Stefan Nicolai trying to go back up for the inside on Charlie Harker. Harker runs wide down at Bruxelles. We also see emerging there along into the pack is Everaldo dos Santos. It's contact up in front. Horrific bout of contact there for Charlie Harker as now we see a huge spread of cars filter out in towards Puon. Dos Santos makes contact with Cheeseman and spills over into the crowd behind. A horrific start into Sector 2. And that only continues to pile on for these drivers here. We see from many that are now caught out in the wash. We see Joey Fisher runs out wide from the live views in the bottom right. Out through the run of things at Stavolo, or Campus, sorry, into Stavolo. But a very troubled start there to the race here in Spa, especially for the case of Everaldo Dos Santos. One driver who I imagine won't be complaining too greatly is going to be Richard Cecil, who's now 8th in the charge right now and actually parked right up the rear bumper of a possible fight. But right behind him as well is Kyle Jenkins, looking to reclaim on 8th position out through Blanchimont. Great run of things inside of that top 10. Very close fighting going on at the front of the field. We're seeing here currently the fight for 8th between Cecil and Jenkins. Cecil runs wide down through turn 19. Rejoins after turn 20. The 113 has more momentum to carry and gets up past. Looking here for Zalan Suit, still leading over Christian LeVay. 6/10 between the pair. And then we see an ultra close pack of cars from behind. Right, Tanguay, and then a bit of a wobble there for Donkin. That falls in a little further behind than he'd like off of the Bentley. He needs every chance he can get here in the slipstream train. Carved out by the Lexus in 3rd. Round into turn 6 they go. Watching here now, Kyle Jenkins having got up and ahead of Richard Cecil. Of course, we saw that move solidified out through the run of things at turn 20. You can see a very close pack of cars here. Joey Fisher versus Danny Felix and Andrew Veldkamp and JM Quito. 4 cars in all there. 2 Beamers, 2 Fords, a Beamer and a Ferrari, but still leading that one for Division 4 is Joey Fisher. In behind, Andrew Veldkamp is being swamped in now. Danny Felix up and ahead of him. JM Quito now gets the rise up over the 616, and so too follows also is Didier Potvin in the number 35. Down through turn 10 now at Bruxelles. Troubled start here for Andrew Veldkamp. That 616, normally very capable in this race, has had a very rough start to things when you consider that Ford is back on the short end of things today. Actually, hang on just a tick. Is it the case here that Ford's... Yes, they absolutely are. 20 kilos on the Mustang. Absolutely is the case. We see from behind here, emerging into a new fight was Pereira and Dos Santos. Pereira up and ahead of Dos Santos at this time. This is for 18th overall between Porsche and McLaren. Looking back up at the front of the field here to see what the state of affairs is looking like from the front row. Christian LeBay and Zalan Such, as they make their way up towards Blanchimont here, are now nearly a full second apart. Zalan Such has the pace here. LeBay, though, holding the fastest lap so far. An even closer fight on the second row, however, as we see here with Wright versus Tanguay. Donkin right behind them as well to make 3 cars in all for the fight of 3rd place. We'll go and catch on board with David Tanguay. This could be a very exciting fight to watch. So on board now with the number 30 out from turn 20. Currently as part of that fight for 3rd place, though he has got to consider his odds here with Brooklyn Donkin parked on his rear bumper. That could be for him a fight of 4th right now for 3rd. Watching a very unique angle here, one of a very small number of cars in this game to be right-hand drive. Does give us a bit of a unique view up through Arouge and Radion as he tries to keep his foot buried in the floor of the car here. On the run up through turn 6, the BMW still right behind him. They find themselves in an awkward stalemate, these three very, very fast cars in a straightaway, the Lexus, the Bentley, and the BMW. Neither of these 3 being able to find advantage over one another. It stays as a very closely held line on the run up through the Kemmel. And will likely be the same case down through to Blanchimont later on in this lap. Looking in here as even further issues have confounded Everaldo Dos Santos. We watch it from Karina Stinson's point of view as Dos Santos has dropped now to 23rd in this race. And as you can see from the point of view of the Aston Martin, there's rear aero damage, if I'm not mistaken there. That wing on the McLaren looking very lopsided. Up in front, you can also just get a glance at the front end damage that was on the McLaren. So this could be a free position up for grabs here by Stinson in the 800. One of the more unique sights of this grid as well, the older Aston Martin V12 Vantage. 2013 this car was introduced in GT racing. You see now getting up past the McLaren. They're side by side, V12 versus V8. 4 more cylinders doing great work here for that overtake, but we must consider much older aero versus damaged newer aero. Who really comes out on top here? Down through pool 1, the McLaren holds its ground and gets the position back. We'll catch on with these two a little later on as we check in here to see Nikolai versus Jenkins in this newfound fight for 8th place. The Mercedes up past the Ferrari as we make our way to Blanchimont. Richard Cecil, it's worth pointing out, leading the AMS, is right behind. You can see the Porsche just glued to the racing line here, sneaking up behind Kyle Jenkins in the run towards the bus stop chicane. From the point of view of Stefan Nikolai, holds things strong on the run through turns 19 and 20 to hold on to a newfound 8th. Up in front, Harker versus Cheeseman. Now, it's worth also getting a look back in with the Bentley as he now has lost ground to Brooklyn Donkin. So on the run back up through Eau Rouge and Radion, this is going to be an exciting one to see for the fight of 4th place here between the Bentley and the Beamer. Up through Eau Rouge and Radion. Dirty air ineffective for the Bentley, so he runs a bit short and has to cut part of the chicane, and that loses him a lot of ground over Brooklyn Donkin as we enter the Kemmel Straight. Looking in behind them for that fight recently emerging as we see into the pit lane goes Everaldo dos Santos. A disastrous start then for the 2-time AM Division race winner. We just check back in to see another part to this fight between Jenkins and Nikolai side by side on the run in towards Lacombe and Melmedy, but nothing as they exit it. Parked right along with them there, Richard Cecil, not afraid to get his hands dirty here, fighting amongst the pro cars. In the lead of AM, knows he has to try and forge a gap out further from the newfound 2nd place. You can only see him just briefly there in the background. The black and green Beamer, that is Cedric Grenier-Massey, now 2nd in the AMS after what has been a questionable start, to say the least, for Dos Santos. Looking at the current standing, and Zalan Such, I mean, ridiculously fast. I'm not quite sure that quite justifies it here. I mean, he is unparalleled in this opening 10 minutes. Very few drivers exist that can put 2.3 seconds on LeBay in that Mustang. And even fewer exist to be able to do it in a Lexus. Zalan Such is just simply that driver. He leads the race then ahead of LeBay, right, currently 3rd, and you can see swiftly approaching now, having gained his bearings about him for the opening 10 minutes of racing, is Brooklyn Donkin. We saw the aftermath of his move against David Tangre, who now falls to the back end of the top 5, still close by, but not enough to fight as of right now. Charlie Harker in 6th with Ben Cheeseman in 7th. Stefan Nikolai in 8th and Kyle Jenkins in 9th. Richard Cecil right behind him in 10th place and leads the AMS. Cedric Grenier-Massey in 11th. Division 2nd for the AMS. Rounding out the division podium is Sergio Belda, currently 12th overall, but right behind him, get a glance in here, 3 more cars trailing on him for this 4-way split for a division podium. Belda versus Fisher versus Felix versus Potvin. Right behind them, George Todd, who, it's worth pointing out, started from the pit lane, so he's made very quick progress on this field to get up towards a stab of a top 15 before the first 10 minutes are out. Heading up towards La Source, he could solidify this before we drop past the first 10 minutes. Going for the inside, down at La Source. Could this spill over for him? Dangerously close to a chance to hit there, Danny Felix, but Didier Potvin runs out wide, invites in JM Quito to come and have a go for position as he finds himself now down in 16th overall. Great move, though, by Todd. Element of surprise from the number 12. Number 26 falls in behind the number 35 up through Eau Rouge and Radion. The 616 behind them. Andrew Veldkamp flying uphill on the run up towards turn 6. And it's gone from bad to worse for Dos Santos because, of course, the first 15 minutes are not yet up in this race. He's back into the paddock, had a drive-through by race control, and that, you just saw it there, is Dos Santos out of round 6. Gone with the wind there. That was a brutal, brutal end to such a short endeavour in this race. Dos Santos, a 2-time division winner in this championship, snuffed out in the opening 10 minutes. You see here from George Todd getting his hands full in a fight with Didier Potvin for 15th. And also from behind him with Andrew Veldkamp and Ruben Pereira. We see JM Quito having emerged up and ahead now. Looking in now, he's going to fight with Danny Felix. This is for Division 5th at this time. Looking back in at the current scope of the lead of AM. This is from Richard Cecil's point of view, still glued in on the slipstream from the number 113 in front of him, Kyle Jenkins, 9th in this race. And all of this is an effort to keep building a gap between himself and Cedric Grenier-Massey. Richard Cecil's looking to have very few, if any, competition for this round of the championship, looking to continue to solidify his lead of the AMs. Has had a formidable season down in the AM category. So far, so good for the number 5. Looking here on the intervals between Cheeseman and Harker, as a fight amongst teammates is short to ensue for 6th place. Mustang versus Huracan. Who would win in that endeavour? 10 cylinders against 8, but one of the fastest cars in GT3 racing right now on Assetto Corsa Competizione. Toe-to-toe with one of its most nimble. More on that later, though. Yellow flags at Blanchimont. The 91 in trouble. That's for Ivan Sanchez. We see the aftermath of it now. He's, I believe, emerged from this unscathed, but he has definitely had a bit of trouble on those tyres. That could see him into an early pit stop. Not that it would matter too greatly because, again, the pit window is not yet open. It opens in about, looking here, just under 3 minutes. Looking in here, one of the closest fights on the field. Wright versus Tanguay. So going to get back on board with the Bentley in his continued battles now for a podium. As he takes now the opportunity to put pressure onto the 54 in front. Back on board with David Tanguay. A driver who's not disappeared from sight here is still Brooklyn Donkin. A driver who Tanguay has swapped positions with over the course of this race so far as we get closer to the first quarter hour. Through to Campus at turns 13 and 14. Three-way split for a podium here in the pros. In towards Stavelot. We'll see here how well can the Bentley hold on against the Lexus. 2 V8s, of course, head-to-head. One with turbos and one without. Bentley's got a 4-litre twin-turbo unit, whereas the Lexus has a 5.4-litre with no turbos at all. Right behind them, though, the elephant in the room, the BMW, working with 2 less cylinders than the cars in front of him. Inline 6 from BMW. Still formidable in the straights, keeps him with Tanguay. This does now introduce the idea there could be a very likely case here for a fight of 4th among these two, as we see a formidable exit there by Wright to put more of a distance up over David Tanguay. Going for the inside then, Brooklyn Donkin at La Source. Tanguay running from the outside has got more momentum for the run up through Eau Rouge and Raidillon. Following in with these two, it's going to be an incredibly close run uphill. These two just unstoppably fast. Watch them now up through turn 6 onto the Kemmel and emerging in the slipstream still. Donkin has held on for dear life and could very well see his way to the inside at Lecon. The BMW on the rear quarter of the Bentley, trying to hope that he runs himself out of room for the brakes, but no, perfect braking line there for David Tanguay to hold ground for 4th place. Brilliant defense here we're seeing for 4th. The Bentley and the Beamer have been head-to-head for some time in this race already. This is only the latest chapter of it. Taking a look at the wider order of things, they're still fighting for 3rd place up in front of them with Wright. In behind them is worth noting here, Harkeby Cheeseman still raging on. Now it is worth considering, unlike some of these other fights, that this one may have with it far lesser degree of ferocity about it. These are, of course, 2 teammates, the Academy number 72 from 5-star and the mainstay 114. We see on the inside out through Pouon, in towards turns 13 and 14, it'll be to the outside. The pit window is now open. It will be open for the next 90 minutes of racing. We'll close with quarter of an hour left to go. Whilst these two can follow each other closely, currently no suggestion has been made over whether or not there will be an attempted overtake. For the 114, he'll go if the opportunity presents itself, but given the performance so far of Harker, that's going to be a tough one to sell. Seeing here the 3-way fight for 3rd. Wright, Tanguay and Donkin. Donkin far closer to Tanguay than Tanguay is to Wright. Up through Blanchimont. Heading in towards turn 19 and 20. The Bentley preemptively covering off the inside, so the BMW has to go and run things the long way around at turn 19. Can he find his way to the inside at turn 20, though? That's the real question. Oh, my goodness, what an overtake from the number 17. That is textbook Get a look at that on the replays. That's worth just getting a look back. So nice we had to look at it twice. Watch this. That's how you get it done. Down at turns 19 and 20. We see, though, an attempted switchback in the live view. David Tangway is not yet done with this fight. Back on in for the fight of 4th place. Right now, side by side. Who backs out? I watch between my fingers to know the answer, and it's Tangway. Amidst the desync there, what we did understand from it, hesitation from the number 30. He's crazy, yes, but he's not stupid. No one would dare attempt it. Not without risking their own necks, and this early in the race, no one would dare try it. Harker and Cheeseman still in contention of 6th. I highly doubt, compared to the fight we're seeing here, that anything soon will happen. Looking for the inside at Melmedy after a bit of oversteer from the BMW. Donkin drops down behind Tangway, but he's still to the outside. Can he outbrake the Bentley is the real question. Down on the anchors goes the Continental. Down through to turn 10. Great returning fire there by David Tangway for the fight of 4th place. This is absolutely epic stuff here in Belgium. What a drive we've seen between these two so far. And we're only looking here 18 minutes into this race. Still 1 hour and 42 left to go. What a treat it has been so far as we kick off the second half of the World Series. In behind, Harker and Cheeseman are spectators no longer to this fight. They're right in and amongst it, right behind Donkin and Tangway for what is now downgraded from what was a fight for 3rd now to a multi-car fight for 4th. And holding on to this, what has been a fantastic back and forth between these two so far in its latest chapter is Tangway for 4th, Donkin 5th, Harker 6th, Cheeseman 7th. Glancing in at the front of the AM field here, we see with Richard Cecil, 10th overall in this race. Still holding on to the back end there of Kyle Jenkins. Meanwhile, he's put about 6.7 seconds, if we can get the word out, over Cedric Grenier-Massey, who now loses ground over to George Todd. It's worth pointing out here, less than 20 minutes into this race, Todd started from the pit lane and is now not only in the top 15, but is edging ever closer to a top 10. That's a frightening thing to consider. And it makes you wonder what things would have looked like had he not started from the pit lane. Charlie Harker on the stray end of this 4-car fight for 4th. Not Charlie Harker, sorry, Ben Cheeseman. We see now side by side Brooklyn Donkin versus David Tangway. It's a drag race here. Charlie Harker going all the way through. Can he go for the inside here off of Donkin? He's just a little too far away from it. But the number 72 still holding on. Cheeseman nearly rolls on through. Out through Lacombe and Melmedy, turns 8 and 9. Turns 7, 8 and 9 more specifically. Down to turn 10. I can't tell whether or not it's the weather here in the UK today, what has been starkly bright and sunny weather, or if it's the racing itself that's got me this worked up. Unbelievable stuff so far. We're boiling in our seats here at this race. Out through turn 12. And to quote the famous Elvis song, you know, I feel my temperature rising here as things hot up on this track. 15 degrees though only on track surface temperature, 17 ambient, so it's actually colder here in Belgium than it is right now from where we're recording in the UK, amidst what is almost what feels like a miniature heat wave. Consistently north of 20, and as you may or may not know, English people are not designed for that kind of weather. Up and around Blanchimont, we see here Charlie Harker, latest to try and challenge David Tangway as he drops down to 5th. Harker looking to go up and around the outside, trying to mimic the same move that Brooklyn Donkin carried out on the Bentley not long ago, but this time around the 30 won't be fooled again. Down through the bus stop chicane, holds his ground. That almost leaves the door open long enough for Cheeseman to come and have a go here for 6th as we run up towards La Source. What has so far been a fantastic endeavour of racing here in Spa. Let's get a look further down the order to see more fighting in and amongst the Anfield. Two of the Holkianos cars, of course, the team's leaders down in the AM Championship, Holkianos Motorsports. We see here JM Quito and Sergio Belda looking to put challenge onto Danny Felix. This will be for a Division 4th at this time. The twin Mustangs chasing down Felix, who I believe started off his endeavours in the World Series in a McLaren of all vehicles, if I'm not mistaken. Now moving in with BMW as of recent. Looking in here, back in with the top 10 as we have took note of how close the gaps are getting between Tanguay, Harker and Cheeseman. Meanwhile, up at the front of the field, that gap between LeBay and Such has only gotten larger, 4.2 seconds now. And Wright's a far cry away, but he's been able to hold his ground firmly and has not let up on that control of the podium, but there could be fresh challenge coming on through here from the number 17, Brooklyn Donkin. Down through turn 11. Only 2.3 seconds away. Out through Puom. As Tanguay starts to peel away almost here in the number 30, the 72 now has to consider again once more a defense away from his teammate, Ben Cheeseman. In the pit lane at the moment, Ivan Sanchez has already served his first mandatory pit stop, so very quick onto it, but it's a drive-through penalty for speeding in the pit lanes here for Ivan Sanchez. Not an ideal start to his endeavours here in Spa. Nonetheless, an hour and 37 minutes for him left to go before the end of round 6. We'll catch on with him later on. We see with his teammate, Sergio Belda and JM Quito, still close to one another, and both of them still trying to put more of a gap there up towards Danny Felix. Running out wide was JM Quito as he touched the gravel off through Campus. Now up towards Stavolo. That gives some credence here for a possible move by Andrew Veldkamp. We see heading down through Stavolo. The 616 will be looking to try and go up the inside, but the door just slammed shut in his face out through the curb of Paul Frere. Could there be something awry here with that 26? Recent troubles then for JM Quito. Now, it started off with that touch of the gravel, but I don't think the whole story relies solely on gravel there. I think there might be something else going on with that Mustang. More on that later, though, as we see back in with Harker and Cheeseman, super close to one another on the run uphill through Arouge and Radion. You see almost up off all four wheels there, Ben Cheeseman. Getting light up over through Radion onto the Camel. Just can't hold a candle, though, to the Ford in front of him. Charlie Harker holds his ground for 6th. Meanwhile, things are starting to quiet down here, so it would appear, on the top 5. 1.3 seconds between Tanguay and Donkin. Currently no suggestion as to whether or not that gap is growing or shrinking, as they're held in somewhat of a stalemate. Of course, these two drivers have already proven today very capable in their own respect, almost equal on that ground. Brooklyn Donkin, though, with that masterful overtake. I mean, getting a look back into that, this was an overtake from earlier on. Ultimately, it was a case where we saw that defense back by David Tanguay, but just to go and look at that overtake once again, this was earlier on in the race between Brooklyn Donkin and David Tanguay. This is what was sort of the start of their fighting phase. And it was a brilliant one there, and we saw a switchback put on for him down at La Source by David Tanguay. These two have just had such great fighting throughout today. Right now, that gap still 1.3 seconds. That could be a bit of a temporary halt to action from the top 5 for the time being. Our nearest to the front of the field is going to be from Harker and Cheeseman, but again, approach this with a grain of salt. These are, of course, two teammates. They both race for 5-star. And I think the last thing that 5-star would want is for them to start fighting each other possibly off the track. They are holding a solid point scoring position. They're 3rd in the Pro Teams Championship. Not a great deal to worry of. Meanwhile, having a look further down the field, Stefan Nikolai in 8th, Kyle Jenkins in 9th, but George Todd is now in the top 10. Number 12 now into the top 10. We see Brooklyn Donkin has come into the pit lane. So this is where we get a great opportunity to see how long this pit lane is. So we've come in now on normally where you'd pit during the course of the Belgian Grand Prix. Okay, that seems all normal. Oh, we would stop here maybe, you'd think. Well, that's, you know, what a sane mind would think, but not here on TRTN. Down through, past this paddock. We don't get to use this. That's not for us. We're not classy enough for the Grand Prix paddock. So down through, you see the run on the inside. This is normally the exit for the Grand Prix pits. We don't get to go out there. We're going all the way down as we follow on here with the number 17, Brooklyn Donkin. on our tour of the pit lane here. This is the reason we tell you all of this, is because of how important these pit stops are going to be now, because this is the longest pit lane on any track in this game. Now down into the GT paddock, this is where our drivers will be stopping. And in the case here of Donkin, he's still going to be traveling the majority of that pit straight all the way down. And you can see he's slowly teetering into his pit box, and he'll be coming to a stop fairly shortly. Into the main run of pit boxes and stopped. That's how long it took. That was over a minute before he even got to a stop. And then he's got 25 seconds on top of that for refueling. Then he's got however long it takes for him to get out. As we've already seen, the sort of emerging line, that exit road from the pits, is super close to turn 6, where drivers are going absolutely flat out. As we see here, speaking of this section of the track, we're on board with now Karina Stinson and Christophe Dupois. They're fighting for position at this time. You can see that escape road there, and it joins right on here at turn 6, where the lines just emerge there. So it's super sketchy when you've got drivers approaching. The timing is an absolute must for the number 17. Fortunately, no issues involved. And as he makes his way out, no trouble. Number 45 stays out. Same story for LeBay. The reason why this comes to be an interesting point here is because normally after the first 30 minutes is where we do start to see a considerable chunk of early pit stops in this race. Drivers going for an alternative strategy often like to select this as their first opportunity. Now, I'd also say it's worth suggesting that the hour and 15-minute mark is where we're going to see a lot more of those runs. Or even, I would say, the hour and 20, because what the drivers are going to be aiming to do is split this 120-minute race into 3 bite-sized chunks. They'll be split up by 2 pit stops, so that's 40-minute stints, 3 in total, split apart by 2 stops. So in about 11 minutes time is where we're going to expect to see the bulk of those stops. We do see drivers try and go for a later strategy 5 minutes thereafter, but that's usually the cut-off point for that optimum first pit window. Catching in here with more fighting. This is way down the order, though. Down into the AM category as we see the current fight for 6th between JM Quito and Andrew Veldkamp. In terms of the closest fights for inside of the pros and inside of that top 10 more poignantly is still between Harker and Cheeseman. And let's see if you can really call it a battle here. These are 2 drivers working together, not working against each other. The academy drivers working alongside the main team and vice versa. It does make you wonder as well with Charlie Harker. Of course, he is part of the 5-star academy. How long does he intend to stay in that academy? Because he's definitely got the makings of main team pace about him. I think it's a case of now just getting more exposed to grids like this, races like this, before he's moved up through the team. We have a rough understanding of how that academy process works over at 5-star. Maybe it's a case where he still needs time to develop before he feels confident to don the black livery and join the main team. Like we see here from the 114, he's been a long-time driver for the 5-star esports team as far back as when they were still called K1, is Ben Cheeseman. New emerging fight here for 3rd in division. The AM podium up for grabs between Joey Fisher and Danny Felix. They're out through campus down towards Stavolo. Here in Sector 2 and now just into Sector 3. Into the pit lanes now goes Ben Cheeseman. That puts a halt on his fight with Charlie Harker. We're seeing here for the fight of Division 3rd. Fisher versus Felix. Ferrari versus BMW. Joey Fisher tries to hold center mass of the road, but Danny Felix momentarily thinks of a move to the inside, hesitates for but a moment there and stays back in behind the 59. Both of them yet to come into the pit lane. From behind them, Sergio Belda not too far away. Then JM Quito, who is himself at this time being pursued by Andrew Veldkamp. So they make their way up through the bus stop chicane. You see here Dupois and Stinson. Brooklyn Donkin after that early pit stop in this race, now creeping up behind them as he makes his way down through the run of things at Stavolo and the curb of Paul Frere. Running out wide though goes Karina Stinson into the gravel. It's a very wily car, that Aston Martin V12 Vantage. Very difficult to control, so it's curious to know why this seemingly new driver, at least to us, would elect to use this machine. This is a car that's, as we've seen before, well behind the times. I think this comes mostly out of preference. Would be curious to ask, though, later down the line as to why the V12 of all cars. Especially if this is among their sort of first couple of months or so in ACC. I mean, I don't know how long Stinson's been racing for, so it's totally a mothball from us to try and guess exactly how long that's been going on for. But say if this is their first couple of months, I mean, that would be like the equivalent of learning how to tread water and then being asked to swim the channel. Sticking them in a V12. We'll ask. We'll try and get a word out of her into the second half of the season. It is a curious thing to see any time the V12 Vantage appears on that grid. Any grid, for that matter. It's such a rare sight these days. You know, maybe floating an idea here, and quote me on it if it ever ends up happening, but you know how the Competizione Performance League already had the Jaguar GT3 Revival Series? Well, you know, it could be an opportunity with a certain V12 powered car, not naming any names, you know. Think about it. Watching on here with Fisher v Felix as it continues to rage on. There is trouble brewing here for Richard Cecil. He drops out of the race lead. So we heard the sound of gravel being collected, but we would not have expected in that time it would have been from the former division lead. He drops now out of the podium, out through Blanchimont. It's disaster for Richard Cecil. For Cedric Grenier-Massey, he takes the lead of AM. With Joey Fisher now to second, Danny Felix to third. Surely this is the Requiem knell for his first pit stop run. The number 5 is in. Also in the pit lane at this time, Stefan Nicolai in the number 55. The Mercedes now in. Have been nursing at least some minor damage over the course of the first 30 minutes of this race. We'll see how long that stacks up to be in the pit lane if he chooses to repair it at all. You see here now the fight for second, formerly the fight for third. Danny Felix versus Joey Fisher up through Eau Rouge and Radion. Big leap over there by the BMW. Look to carry a bit more speed than the Ferrari up round turn 6. Get a glance at this, a slingshot in the works. Felix versus Fisher. Felix on the inside on the run up towards Lacombe and Melmedy. Can Fisher hope to outbrake him down into turn 7? Not this time around. Falling in behind now to third place, Joey Fisher, as Danny Felix secures a BMW 1-2 after the first 30 minutes of racing here in the AMS. A surprise turn of events for Richard Cecil. Heartbreaking stuff to see after such a confident race lead undone in one fell swoop. The number 5 now into his pit box, and his fate in this race left uncertain. 34 minutes then into this race so far, an hour and 26 left to go here in Spa. Our most recent fighting then at the forefront of AMS is between Felix and Fisher. Felix with that formidable send up through Eau Rouge and Radion, out through to the Kemmel Straight is what gave him the leg up over Joey Fisher and solidified his current command of second with BMW. Andrew Velkamp finds himself in a likely spot here to secure a top 5 in the AM category. JM Quito and his iron sights. The 616 versus the 26, both of them nursing 20 kilos of ballast weight. Now into the pit lane goes Charlie Harker in the number 72. It's all silent on the forefront of this race. Zalan Such yet to have taken his pit stop, I believe, possibly gauging it to another 5 minutes before he does so, in line with the 40-40-40 strategy of today. Same story for LeBay, but he might try something alternative to try and get the leg up over Zalan Such. That gap now up at 6.1 seconds. Wright currently in third, on for a Lexus double podium. David Tanguay fourth in this race. Charlie Harker most recently into the pits. That promotes Kyle Jenkins to fifth place. And George Todd now to 6th. It has been a formidable story of comeback here from the number 12. Started from the pit lane, was projected a third place start, then mysteriously into the pits for the race start, and has had to rebuild his standing in this race from scratch. Now 6th after just over half an hour. Joey Fisher dropping more time now away, as now we see from Cedric Grenier-Massey, he's into the pit lane. JM Quito also in. So for Veldkamp, for Felix and for Fischer, all finding free positions on this track. Sergio Belda now up to the podium as well. So we'll go and catch on board with some drivers now as we've got a sort of moments of respite in the early stages of this race. Oh, into the wall. That's Stefan Nicolai out of Blanchimont. We've just caught the 55 now as the yellow flags are out. The 55 wipes out against the wall. This is not the first time we have seen this before. Keen-eyed viewers will remember all the way back, I think it's season 2, round 1 of the NLRL Sunday League, a very similar wipeout for Hayden Prodger, and his time short-lived, albeit with Nissan. Very similar issue there. The 55 shrugs it off, and Nicolai will stay out, adhering to his original strategy. But this is the setback of the ages there. It's a miracle he's come away with such little damage, so it would appear, especially given where he got hit. That could have easily done in his rear aero. When the whole side of the car clattered, well, you could see a little bit of damage though on the rear, but nothing that would otherwise compromise fully the handling of that car. Dupois v Cheeseman at the moment here for 14th overall, following with the Lamborghini down through the no-name corner up towards Pouon. And I believe there, yes, Dupois just allowing him on by, not trying to fight with a driver in a different category, knowing he's got his own battles to fight from the AMS. Joey Fischer's into the pit lane, so Danny Felix is off by his lonesome at what is the newly granted lead of this race in the AMS. Also into the pit lane now is Christian Lebay. As we mentioned before, he may have tried to go for an alternative strategy where he tries to get a bit earlier into the pits than Zalan Such. This now almost solidifies the belief we have that in the next 2 minutes, Such will be into the pits, adhering to a 40-40-40 in stint structure for today's race. We see not too far away from him is right in second, but the closest Lexus to him at this time was another Lexus we saw not too long ago, that being Christophe Dupois. And the identical Lexus cars there, that's because I believe the RCF has one of 2 liveries in the entire game and is surprisingly difficult to customize. And no, this definitely comes as a surprise, as about a minute in early to a dead-on 40-minute stint. Now, this could easily be chalked up to the idea that, yes, the pit lane run does take that long. And it's a case where we saw it was a little over a minute it would take to get from here in the entry to the pits, down through the Grand Prix paddock, out through turn 1, down past towards the GT paddock, and then into your pit box. So I think it is here a case, this is as close as Such dare get it to a 40-minute stint. Wright is also in, and Tanguay in with him. Kyle Jenkins, currently no word, but if we are to believe anything off of that top 3, there could be the chance that he comes in. Right behind him is George Todd. Ferrari against Ferrari here. 5-star versus Malwar Racing. What saith the 113? The same as the number 12, nothing. Also in the pit lane at this time, Matthew Badensky, Christophe Dupois, and Karina Stinson all in. The 616, Andrew Veldkamp, drive through for track limits. We see here for Danny Felix, will he be into the pit lane? That looks to be the case, yes, the 985 coming in. Sergio Belda elects to stay out, taking the lead of the AMS for the time being. Andrew Veldkamp into the pit lane to serve his drive-through. You see already with Lebay on his way down through Blanchimont. Now, the strategy he's trying to counter is that leading 45. And as it would stand right now, Zalan Such has yet to drop off of his jacks. There is still plenty of time here for him, but it's going to be a little bit anxiety-inducing watching here. That 45 still stationary in his pit box. He drops off the jacks and is right off into the pit lane exit, just off the limiters there. So he's held that one very, very well. That's just as Christian Lebay exits turn 2. So that gap is now even larger, I believe, between the 45 and the 119. Wright's on his way out. We also see making their way down through turn 2. Brooklyn Donkin hang on just a tick here. Yellow flags. The 505's in trouble. That's Badensky at turn 12. No damage, as it would appear, for the BMW. But that would definitely be a case where if he's had a spin on the track, his tyres are absolutely melted. Not a great start then. Brand new tyres as well. Looking here, George Todd versus Kyle Jenkins. We're going to go and catch on board with the two Ferraris at the forefront of action today. The 113 now in a race-leading position here, albeit under more literal translations as it's not strategically enforced. He's still yet to have come into the pits himself. Fighting, though, for the lead nonetheless with George Todd. A driver who started from the pit lane, goes up and around the outside. Could this be the signs that Kyle Jenkins is coming into the pits? They both race into the pit lane, so that will be a solidified position for George Todd. And a great move nonetheless. Both the Ferraris now into the pit lane. The 113 now behind the number 12. It's only a matter of time then for that 45 to return to the race lead once more. For Sergio Belda, where could he find himself now? He's on for the podium in the AM category not long ago. We'll see. Does he come into the pit lane? Yes, is the case here for the 65 veering in to the pit lane entry. And as Alan Such makes his way into turns 19 and 20, it's a case where George Todd and Kyle Jenkins have only just got around La Source off the exit of the Grand Prix paddock. That really does go to show how monstrously long that pit lane is. You effectively cover just shy of, I'd say, about maybe a fifth of the track's distance at about 30 miles an hour. Up through Eau Rouge and Radion, then Zalan Such back into the lead here of round 6. What has been great racing so far here in Spa. Lexus back on top. Ford on their trails, though. 7.2 seconds between the pair, as Labé has to slide his way up through Eau Rouge and Radion. Get a look at this on the replays just quickly. As we saw there, it was as he hit that compression point. As we watched away from Zalan Such, so now on to Labé it would be. And there, he hit this little bump as he went a little too far on the curb. That is what upset the balance off the car. It led to it sliding just a tiny bit, and that snap forced him to cut over through the run of Radion. Troublesome indeed. With George Todd on his way out, Kyle Jenkins, as it would stand, just getting off the jacks now, as they continue to spill down the order. It's actually the case where Jenkins gets the position back up, so the camera angles are a little bit deceiving, as it would be a case that this is, I think, a very rare situation where we've been able to see an overtake into the pits and then an overtake in the pits. And are we about to see an overtake out of the pits, is my question. On the run down the Kemmel in towards Lacombe and Melmedy, with their tyres so fresh and still with no heat in them, I'd say the chances are unlikely. But these two might very well be the first drivers in today's race to have a fight in the pit lane, owing to position in the pit box and difference in strategy timing. See for the number 12. Tyres struggling down through Bruxelles at turn 10. Same story, though, for the car in front of him in the 113, Kyle Jenkins. These two emerge 8th and 9th in today's race. It's still worth pointing out, though, that George Todd, having started from the back of the field, is in that top 10. Recently into the pit lane, Andrew Veldkamp. Back on with the fight of two Ferraris on board then with Kyle Jenkins in the 113. Currently fighting then for 8th. Following out through turn 16, now to turn 17 and 18 here at Blanchimont. Now, it's very easy under dirty air to find yourself in trouble down through this section of the track. Up through Blanchimont we go then. Practically super glued to one another there. The 113 leaves the door open for more than just a split second, and that's enough for the number 12, because leaping up the inside goes George Todd, runs himself short in towards turn 20. The 113 trying to fight him back. Can he find the grounds for it? Doesn't appear to be the case. A very elbows out approach here, not as graceful as the overtake we saw from Donkin against Tanguay, but not one that I imagine George Todd is too fussed with. Because now that's a free position for him. He's up to 8th. Kyle Jenkins behind him now. And bringing things back in line with what they looked like just before these two made their way into the first of 2 pit stops. When it came to the run up through Eau Rouge and Radion, Jenkins ever so slightly faster. Now in the slipstream out from turn 6. Held at arm's length though. Could be indicative then that he's got higher aero in his setup compared to Todd, and that's what's holding him out at arm's length despite being in the slipstream. We'll catch on with them later on. There is what appears to be some very close fighting going on up through Eau Rouge and Radion. Get a look in here with Sergio Belda fighting with Cedric Grenier-Massey. Right now, as it would stand upon this grid, Richard Cecil is back on top. He's back in the lead of the AMS. I'd not believe it. After having seen what happened for him down through the curb of Paul Frere, he's played his cards very close to the chest, and for it, he's back in the lead. I had to double take that one because I didn't quite believe it right away. We saw what happened for him down through the curb of Paul Frere, where he ran out wide, he caught the gravel. And there's a case where in the aftermath, when we were following on with fighting from Fisher v Felix, it was a case where they ran straight into it and he fell out of that podium. It was Cedric Grenier-Massey, the driver on screen at the moment, who took up that lead for the time being. Now he finds himself encompassed in an incredibly close scrap for what is now a Division 3rd. Behind him, Danny Felix. Behind Felix is Sergio Belda. Behind Belda is JM Quito. 4 cars in contention for the last of the podium positions, 2 BMWs and 2 Fords. It's worth considering here, slowly catching up to Richard Cecil as Stefan Nicolai. And we saw him shrug off what was a huge wipeout here at Blanchimont just earlier on in this race. Down at this section, actually, specifically. And just keep on going. So it's quite a miracle, I'd say, to see that he's this close to a top 10, given the amount of damage that he's more than likely had. I don't think all of it is exactly presentable on the car. I think it's a case where there could still be a lot of damage to the tyres, given that situation as well. More so than just bodywork alone. Could also be damage to the suspension. In behind, Belda and Quito. Now the 2 Holkianos cars will be, I imagine here, aiming to work together. We do see, though, very late onto the brakes goes the 65. That does leave the door open for JM Quito, who swings on through. There was the idea there for Belda to try and get very late onto the brakes, maybe as a bit of a shock and awe tactic to try and throw focus off of Danny Felix, but as it stands right now, Felix holds 4th in division. That's 14th overall in this race. Looking in for the nearest fights on track. Danny Felix versus Cedric Grenier-Massey. Also JM Quito and Sergio Belda. But those two, again, such as we saw for the case of Cheeseman and Harker, are more than likely going to be working together. So don't expect to see anything too frayed between those two. It would be primarily here between Grenier-Massey and Felix to where you would see anything tantamount to battling. 50 minutes then through on this race, nearly halfway through on round 6 here in the World Series, and we're about to see, by looks of things, a fight for Division 3rd. Cedric Grenier-Massey, still a new driver to the series. Danny Felix looking to fight along with him. 985 versus 6. 2 Beamers at war. Out through campus into Stavelot. You notice here it's a bit more of a nervous performance from Cedric Grenier-Massey. He's been on a real series of highs and lows in this race, momentarily leading it for but a time, having lost out seconds now to Joey Fisher, and having lost out the lead to the original leader of this AM category side of the race, Richard Cecil. Now, Grenier-Massey runs the risk of being relegated from the podium. by a fellow BMW. Danny Felix on the charge down through to turn 19 and 20. Neither of them pray to make any kind of slip up here because they would invite in the two Holkianos Mustangs behind them of JM Quito and Sergio Belda. It's worth pointing out the emergence of a new fight in the works here. Wright versus Donkin. Now, Donkin had a very early pit strategy in this race, and that's what's netted him so far a successful bid at a podium in the Euro Titans BMW. You can see right behind him is the 54. Fresher tyres for Wright at this time. And on this stint, we're roughly in the ballpark of some 28 minutes away from the next side of this strategy. If we are to believe the 40-40-40 is the optimum strategy, and I imagine many drivers will be believing the same given how much time is wasted in the pit lane, they want to play things safe here, knowing the kind of gamble they risk to try and go with an alternative strategy. So if we had to believe that correctly, we're about 27, just 28 minutes under left to go before that next phase. Danny Felix still pursuing then Cedric Grenier-Massey, and I said before he was having a bit of a nervous performance, but it seems that that pressure can be a great motivator for him because he's starting to put some distance over Danny Felix. Meanwhile, Stefan Nikolai is now ahead of Richard Cecil. Oh, off in the background, that's Stinson. What on earth has happened here for Karina Stinson? Yellow flags out for the 800. We just saw the nose of the Aston Martin in our peripheral vision as we followed on for that fight between Nikolai and Cecil. And it does look like significant damages here for the Aston Martin. Making our way up through turns 17 and 18 here at Blanchimont. It does look to be also some kind of rear end impact on the V12 Vantage. That wing slanted. The headlights are faulty. So a big impact if we are to believe anything here out of turn 16 at the curb of Paul Fair for Karina Stinson. Yellow flags will ensue, and I believe this is likely a case she'll be diving for the pit lane, as that car, I would have on good authority to say, is inoperable in its current condition. Into the pit lane she goes. Green flags back out. 1 hour, 6 minutes left to go here in Spa. And a horrible turn of events then for the 800. Donkin v Wright. Previously a fight in great speculation here. 1.5 seconds between the pairs. It appears now that Donkin's finding his groove amongst the strategy of today's race. Looking in for a former fight now as it goes out past a second. Felix versus Grenier-Massey. Joey Fisher now in their line of sight, so it could very well be a case here that there is a three-way fight for second coming up around the corner. Joey Fisher, second in the AMS right now. And this, I believe, is Fisher's highest current result if he were to finish second in today's race. Just getting a look through those last couple of results here for Joey Fisher. No, he would equalise on his best result. His best result was second place in Watkins Glen round 4 of the championship, so he'd be equalising on his best result. He's had a very capable race here. It's worth noting from Joey Fisher, he's been out of that last round. He didn't show up to round 5, and Watkins Glen was the sign of sort of good things to follow after a bit of a slump at round 3 of the champion. Sorry, round 2 of the championship, I should say. No, it is round 3, Imola. So he has been back on form here. If the last valid result was anything to go by, it was second place in Watkins Glen. So Fisher is starting to sort of relax into this grid now. He's formed a capable place amongst its standings. Now into the top 10. Now that last round no-show isn't going to be doing him many favours because it has dropped him a fair few positions from where he stood on the run into the Red Bull Ring last weekend. For these two here, though, it's worth keeping an eye for Cedric Grenier-Massey and Danny Felix. Still very fresh to the series, with Grenier-Massey having made his debut at the Red Bull Ring last week. He finished 4th in the AMS. For Danny Felix, this is, I believe, his debut here now. We have seen him before, I believe, in a different series when he raced with McLaren. So that's definitely news to me that Danny Felix is actually on his debut drive today.
I could have sworn we've seen him before this season.
Oh, it kind of goes to show then how all of this starts to bleed into one at some point when we cover, I think it's been about 10 contracts we have going on at the moment here on TRTN across a few different series and a few different organisers. And these drivers, they get around. We've seen plenty of these drivers in other places. Charlie Harker, Ben Cheeseman and Brooklyn Donkin, for example. We see those drivers over on the Sunday League coming up tomorrow at 6:30. Buller Bay, we've seen him in multiple Competizione Performance League series. We've seen him in HCCL in the multi-class and in the GT4 Challenge. We've seen him over on the Sunday League. We've also seen in limited part him over on the Console Endurance Series. Race leader then, Zalan Such, looking to return to form. Three-time race winner in this series. All of that was encompassed in just one round at the 3x40 in Silverstone at the season premiere of the World Series. Could he be on for his fourth? That's the real question. As we get closer and closer to the halfway mark of this race, we see back in here Danny Felix versus Cedric Grenier-Massey. So we'll go on board with these two now to get us a better view of everything from the fighting of a Division 3rd, following with Danny Felix. Two very new drivers then to this field, if the data is to be believed. Danny Felix making his debut drive in the World Series, with Grenier-Massey on his second race in after his debut last round, up through Blanchimont. We are keeping an eye on the current build-up to a fight of third between Wright and Donkin. They are getting closer and closer to one another, but that has been fairly slow to progress compared to other fights on the field. Felix once again with a better exit from Eau Rouge and Radion, so round turn 6 in the slipstream on Grenier-Massey. You can hear the revs climb just that little bit as he gets into the slipstream proper. Cedric Grenier-Massey runs out wide, so Danny Felix could have third in the AMS down through Le Common Melmedy. The 985 alongside with the number 6 as Grenier-Massey rejoins, now back up into third place. Down through Bruxelles, turn 10. You can see the hesitance now on that number 6 after his incident at Le Common Melmedy. And this is now the best opportunity Felix has in this moment of hesitance, where he's going to be a little bit more nervous in the corners. Is the best opportunity now to pick a corner and stick for it, because the overtaking opportunities here coming up fairly short. Out through Campus into Stabilo. Behind them, again, still the two Holkianos Fords of JM Quito and Sergio Belda. If these two slip up for even a moment in their efforts to fight for the podium, those two will be the first to know about it. Going the long way around the curve of Paul Frere. That will give him the inside line for the run up through Blanchimont, but he has got to commit to this line now, foot in the throttle all the way in the floor as we hit the halfway mark. Danny Felix going for third into Blanchimont around the outside. Grenier-Massey holds his ground with his foot in the floor. What a move to hold off that move for third. My goodness. Meanwhile, yellow flags. Charlie Harker in jeopardy off the exit of turn 9. The 72 in serious trouble. Well, what a move there by Cedric Grenier-Massey to hold off Danny Felix. That forces him now into the iron sights here of JM Quito as we hit the halfway mark of this race. Now getting a look at the current standing order. Zalan Such in the lead of this race. Christian Lebay in second. The gap now up at 12.2 seconds That is absolutely brutal. Brooklyn Donkin in third. Wright in fourth, Tanguay fifth. We saw recent trouble for Harker, but he maintains sixth place ahead of Cheeseman in seventh. George Todd in eighth. Kyle Jenkins, as it would appear right now, ninth. And Stefan Nikolai rounds out the top 10. Richard Cecil behind him in 11th place, leading the AM division. Joey Fisher on division second. And as it stands right now, still contested is Grenier Massey versus Felix, now also versus Keto for a division third. Overall, though, they're 13th, 14th, and 15th, with Sergio Belda behind in 16th, Didier Potvin in 17th, Matthew Badensky in 18th, Andrew Velkamp in 19th, Christophe Dupois in 20th, Ivan Sanchez in 21st, Karina Stinson in 22nd. Now, having fixed up the damages on Aston Martin and having completed both mandatory pit stops, now cleared for the rest of this race. But it was a long time spent in the pits here, so how many positions is she liable to gain by nature of having everyone else pitched for strategy? Checking in here with Danny Felix, looking to put the pressure back onto Cedric Grenier-Massey. Right behind him, JM Keto. These three still in contention for that division third in the AM Championship right now. These two new drivers, it will have little impact on their standings inside of that top 10. They could maybe, at the very best of times, see them get closer to it right now, but all they're gunning for is their first podium in this series. They can work from that point onwards. They are at quite a disadvantage here with Cedric Grenier-Massey only having entered last round. Danny Felix supposedly just this round. We have seen him before, though. I don't forget a name so quickly. Down through to La Source. JM Keto now firmly in pursuit in the number 26. And will likely go and catch on board with that Mustang. He's got front row tickets to this great fight going uphill at this time, watching on with JM Keto. The Holciano's Mustang currently in 5th in division, 15th overall in the race, up through Origin Radion. Watching as both the Beamers close in on one another. Danny Felix looking to put even more pressure now onto Cedric Grenier-Massey, looking for the inside. We'll watch here from JM Keto's point of view to see down the inside goes Danny Felix on Cedric Grenier-Massey, but he turns into the wall. Over rotation for the BMW. It is disaster again here at Le Combe and Melmedy. So what happened for him there? Following on with the point of view here of JM Keto, you can see he goes for the inside and just over rotates. The car tucks in a little too hard for him and pivots all the way in. Very little he could have done given the time between going into the corner and coming out of it. The reaction timing needed there far beyond what he had at the time. JM Keto, this is a healthy promotion of position, now 4th. His teammate Sergio Belda in 5th in the AMS for today's race. It'll be another healthy dosage of points for the Holcianos Motorsports team. They lead in the team standings in the AM Championship. Whilst we have the opportunity, let's go and get a quick glance at those teams championships, pulling away from the regulations here to see what the teams are looking like coming into this round. Now, in terms of the pro standings, Malois look unopposed on this grid. Black Nitro Racing now down to only a single driver. That's none today, with sadly connection troubles for Jonas Franke, leaving him out of today's race. 5-star do stand upon the opportunity to emerge second in the team standings heading in towards round 7 next week. Now, in terms of the rest of that top 5, Zalan Sucha's return has been the Hail Mary solution for Velocity Racing Team. They currently find themselves straying down towards the back of that top 5. As it would stand, though, things could definitely lighten up for them. We'll touch back on this in a moment's time, as in the time having since discussed, there have been 2 major incidents. For the 65, that being Sergio Belda, and also for the 72, that being Charlie Harker. And looking to try and catch in here with what's gone on for the 65. We can see it is absolute disarray here for Sergio Belda. This is catastrophic. That'll be him into the pit lane, unsurprisingly so, but horrific state of affairs there. He was at a confident P5, and that has all come away at the seams for him. So his teammate now left by his lonesome to attack. So you see in the background is Badensky and Danny Felix. They're being intercepted by Brooklyn Donkin, who was on that alternative strategy. Now he's kept to that commitment of early pit stops, because Donkin, now having done both of his current pit stops, is 15th and in range. So he will be having all of these positions you see on screen in the moment off of Fisher, Grenier, Massey, Quito, and Felix. And starting with Felix, so it would appear, because already having got the position up is Brooklyn Donkin, a man on a mission after that early pit stop. Now, that was whilst we were talking about the teams. That's what drops him down through the order, back and away from third. That brings right back up to the podium. We do see there, was that a disconnect? Yes, it was. We're down to 21 cars on this grid. So for Brooklyn Donkin, he's looking to play for the long game again, undercutting the standard stint by about 13 minutes off of what is normally the 40-40-40 strategy we've seen since the implementation of the static refueling from last round. Part of me still longs for the pre-round 5 regulations, though. I mean, that was certainly an interesting performance we saw from right back in Watkins Glen at round 4 of the championship. It was one that kept us on the edge of our seats, because you could never really call it. When was he going to come into the pits? Was it going to be a strategy that ever worked? And it was when he came into the pits, got up on the jacks, dropped off, left. That's when it all made sense. It clicked in our head just like that. Sadly, we won't be having moments like that again, but we can understand the reasoning why. You could see both sides of the argument why race control wouldn't want races to fall into that. They introduced the 2 pit stops for a reason. They were hoping it would split the race into thirds, and that's what would give a bit more of a strategic side to it. But Wright found the loophole. You can't really hate the player. You got to hate the game. Into the pit lane goes Kyle Jenkins. Also in the pits at this time, of course, Sergio Beldet, having just been released after a lengthy time spent in the pits. We saw the aftermath of his incident down at the bus stop chicane, where he was stranded in the grass, limping into the pit lane. But now the 65 returns to the track. In here with Ben Cheeseman in the back of the top 5 at the moment. Behind him, you can see just emerging in a frame George Todd, and it has been such a remarkable performance here by the number 12 today, having started from the pit lane off of what was going to be 3rd place, is now within arm's length of a top 5 here in Spa. Now, of course, there is still some factors to consider, Brooklyn Donkin among them, as he now clings onto the back end of JM Quito in his endeavours to pursue 11th and north of it. Out through Stavolo into the curb of Paul Frere, side by side between himself and Quito, as he puts nearly a wheel into the gravel there. A tiny little plume of dust kicked up behind him. Brooklyn Donkin, albeit a bit of an edgy move there, but he's up to 11th. JM Quito sees this only as an opportunity now, clinging on to the slipstream of a car that will be continuing its way up. Has no reason to get out of his way and won't be getting out of his way anytime soon. And this could be somewhat of an aid for him here to get closer to that number 6. We'll be shortly getting on board here with Todd versus Cheeseman. This could be a very exciting battle for the top 5. Glancing in, though, with Brooklyn Donkin, it has been a very curious strategy here today. You see from the number 17 going up through Rouge and Radion. Behind him now, JM Quito. Zalan Such is only about 3 seconds away. You can see the Lexus having made his way into frame just on the wide shots there for the run up through Rouge and Radion. And there he is emerging up and ahead of his fellow Lexus, that being, by looks of there, Christophe Dupois, who moves out of the way for Danny Felix. Cedric Grenier-Massey, currently 3rd in the AMS. And about 2 seconds away from 2nd place. Richard Cecil continues his stead of the lead. And that's been a remarkable turnaround when you consider what happened for the number 5 earlier on in this race. That really did have us quite shocked to see how quickly he's turned that around. But again, that's the making of a champion. And he's been through the ringer before. He's had bad races. He knows precisely what needs to be done to turn a bad race into a good one. Leave it with the number 5 and he'll work magic. So far, leading after his troubles down at turn 16. We see here with Brooklyn Donkin versus Cedric Grenier-Massey down through in towards campus, turns 13 and 14. And from the outside now to the inside. Nice, neat and tidy there from the number 17. Assertive but fair seems to be the rule of thumb from a lot of the Euro Titans drivers that we've seen in the past. Donkin, no exemption then on that style of driving. That seems to be almost something enforced over there. Recent troubles for the number 12. Oh no, I don't want to look, but I think we have to here. It's George Todd. And I do worry to know, is there any damage? It doesn't look like it. Because it was up through Eau Rouge and Radion. You know for a fact there's like a very good coin toss here. If it's up through Eau Rouge and Radion, up towards Kemmel, that happened flat out. So I'm at a loss here to know what exactly happened for him that brought out those yellow flags for the first time. But he appears unscathed, albeit a far cry off the distance between himself and Cheeseman. Now some 9 seconds between the two, and definitely has done a number on those tyres. But what on earth happened? Being the real question. Currently in the pit lane then, we have 2 drivers in at this time. Danny Felix recently in the 985 and also in the pits right now. Also an AM driver, the 616 of Andrew Veldkamp with Mauer Racing in the AM division. Closest battles on track. JM Quito versus Cedric Grenier-Massey, and we see a recent escalation of their fight currently for third as we see a brilliant exit by the Mustang in the slipstream on the BMW after a recent overtake by Brooklyn Donkin. We now also see having yielded for the arrival of the 45. This does open the doors up for the number 26. We'll look to catch on board then as we see just into the pit lane now goes right, attempting a counter strategy. 6 minutes, just about 7 minutes actually behind the expected pit window. We'll go to catch on board here with the number 26, JM Quito, in hot pursuit of a podium. Up in front of him. Still learning the ropes of this grid. And now a drive-through penalty for Cedric Grenier-Massey. That is detrimental for his chances of a podium. And that has been the best news Quito has heard all day. The number 26, that's the easiest P3 he's going to get today. And now he's got to make that opportunity stick. 46 minutes between himself and the end of this race. It could be another Holkianos podium coming up. We'll catch on with him later on. We see, of course, into the pit lane went right. This is, by looks of things, in counter to Brooklyn Donkin, who currently exits turn 16. Up and around the run at Blanchimont. Right, still in his pit box. It's worth pointing out, though, how close he was to the exit of the pit lane. So this is going to be super close. Down at La Source, then, is Brooklyn Donkin. Only a few more meters away, as it would stand here from right. He's off the jack, so he's on the run out. The number 17 and the 54 could run into each other, as now off the limiters goes the 54. The number 17 down through turn 2, about to ascend through Eau Rouge and Radion. You can hear just in our left ear there the sound of that 54's V8 engine rumbling to life as he makes his way to the pit exit out through turn 6. They're side by side between the 17 and the 54, but having more momentum to his aid, Brooklyn Donkin is out past. His strategy working wonders. That's an almost guaranteed podium if he can hold his ground for the next 44 minutes of racing. Christian Labey now into the pit lane. Also in the pits as well is Cedric Grenier-Massey to serve his drive-through penalty, and that's his podium chances here for the AMs coming apart at the seams as it would appear right now. Didier Potvin moves up to 4th. JM Quito moves into the last of those podium spots for the AM category. And right now, Danny Felix could find his way up a free position over a driver that he spent a decent time of today's race battling with, as that still leaves Grenier Massive multiple positions down and still with a pit stop to serve. This has worked wonderfully so far for that 985. He could find some redemption back into the top 5 proper, currently Division 6th. With all 5 of the cars ahead of him still yet to have boxed. That does leave things open-ended for him. And what is evidently his first appearance to this grid. That's news to me. I'm pretty sure we have seen him before. I'm jogging my memory to try and think where. I'll have to get back to you on that one, because that is certainly news to me. You now see they're released from the jacks, goes Christian Lebay, and he comes off of the jacks. As coming into the pits goes Stefan Nicolai. A driver who's had a spotty race today in that 55. Of course, we saw him in at the wall off of Blanchimont not long ago. And now on his last pit stop. Also into the pits, then goes JM Quito. In a bid to secure away his podium in the AMS, he's coming in earlier than his contemporaries. We're still about 2 minutes out, but for how long it takes to come into the pits, I'd say that's closer to a single minute. So this is as close as Quito will get it. The next lap would have brought him over that limit. The 5:05, that's Matthew Badensky now with a drive-through penalty, I believe they're for track limits. 5:05 in trouble. Or the race is out. As we settle in for the next 42 minutes of racing, a lot of the pit strategy so far has kept the drivers at ample distance from one another. One gap that could be progressing in the near future is Donkin v Wright. Now, when you consider Donkin has far older tyres on this current stint compared to Wright, and this is in a case of multiple laps in difference, towards the end of this race, there is a pretty decent chance here that Wright will be able to find more pace to continue to pursue Brooklyn Donkin. Now, this will, but by the end of this race, form up to make a fight for the podium. Ben Schiessman is in. Now joining Nicolai and Quito. Nicolai off the jacks there, now leaving the pit lane. JM Quito not long from doing the same. The 114 recently into the pit lane. We have confirmation as well. JM Quito's off the jacks and on his way out. Likely to be a case that Badensky comes into the pits on this lap to serve that drive-through penalty. 41 minutes left to go then in today's race. Zadan Such currently in the lead, and as it would appear behind him, and it really does go to show the distance he's been able to carve out, is Brooklyn Donkin, and he's down in 7th in this race, right behind him with 2 tenths now, having made up on that gap originally. 1.9 seconds it was at the last interval, now 1.7 as we enter lap 34. For these two, it's lap 33. Again, speaking volumes to the distance carved out by the leading 45. Number 5 now in, Richard Cecil, leader of the AM division. Can he still find his way to the lead of this race after his pit today? We did see him turn things around in miraculous fashion here. The number 5 back on top of the AMs as he enters the pits. Joey Fisher will stay out. Didier Potvin is into the pit lane as well. So Joey Fisher is going to move up into the lead of the AMs for the time being, until he himself makes that leap to the pit lane, though I imagine it's not long from now in the case of the current stint times. It's also worth considering here for these drivers, they've only got about 30, not even 35, they've got 25 minutes, I believe they're roughly, before the pit window shuts, and they are locked out from serving their last pit stop. So it's a case here, if Fisher is going to try and go long, he's got 25 minutes to do so, and with the pit lane being this long, he does not want to risk falling over that margin. So we'll see whether or not he chooses to do that, but I would say on this track, a gamble of that kind is just unnecessary. It's got to be played by the books here for strategy. We don't often see deviations on the strategic norm yield anything close to a good result like we've seen on other tracks in the past. The 5:05 now clearing the drive-through penalty. Right behind him there is Richard Cecil. now on his way out. Didier Potvin in the pit lane at the moment, still in there. Cedric Grenier-Massey now joins into the pits. David Tangray also in, having come to a stop recently there with Bentley. Current silence then on any kind of strategy calls for George Todd. He tries to get up past Matthew Badensky down through turn 10. As we are seeing the final of our pit stops starting to fall in now, as the number of drivers withholding their chances to come into the pits now becoming a swift minority of this grid. About 4 cars left yet to have served their last pit stop. See if it's Alan Such. That's not going to be happening anytime soon because he's on to lap 35 of this race. George Todd would be the nearest on that judgment call if memory serves correct, though it could, or it was Joey Fisher, so now it will be George Todd next on that possible judgment call. Just under 38 minutes left to go here in Spa. See here for the number 12 into the pit lane goes George Todd from second in the race. And it has been a remarkable performance. I cannot stress that point enough here from George Todd. Was predicted to start up in that top 5 under quali predictions today. Made 3rd place at the end of qualifying. Then a pit lane start for some reason. Whatever trouble it could have been there for the number 12. Forced him back into the pits for the start of today's race. But he has not backed away from the opportunity today. He has met it head on. And as he came into the pits today, was on the podium. And I would say that it's still a great chance that he will be in the scope of things for the, I'd say, the top 5. I would really stand on a confident assertion that that is the case here for George Todd. But we'll come to see if that comes to be in today's race. That leaves now only 3 drivers left to have taken their pit stops. Alan Such now brings that tally down to 2 drivers. He's in the number 45. So the 2 leading cars now in the paddock. Joey Fisher on his way down through the bus stop chicane will stay out on this lap. You're seeing the case here for Christian LeBay. Moves up into 2nd ahead of George Todd, but still a full lap behind Alan Such. So again, it just goes volumes here to describe what has been going on for him here. Actually, unless... Well, I'll have to check this under the updates for him here. No, I think it is a case he is a lap up off the grid. George Todd then falling down through the order as he's on his way out of the pits. Joey Fisher will make that 7th place. So George Todd will return to 6th, as it would appear right now. As I say that, though, Todd emerges behind Cheeseman. So a top 10 still on the cards. I would say anything else beyond that is totally up in the air. 35 minutes left to go. I have no doubts he will continue to fight. His latest target will be this one here, the 114, Ben Cheeseman, now up to 7th. Alan Such still stationary in the pit lane. LeBay out through turn 16. Up towards Blanchimont. That gap narrowing by the 2nd between these 2. Question is, the moment he drops off the jacks, where will he find himself then? The 45 still stationary in the pit lane, currently the race leader, even as his car remains idle. That goes to show just how far up the order he's been. He's off the jacks. LeBay's on his run out through turn 20. Now as he exits the pits, before LeBay has even made the course of turn 1, Alan Such is out onto the field here, out through to turn 6, onto the Kemmel straight. That is just absurd. The gap that he's held, remarkable. This is the return we've been waiting for Zalan Such, the same driver who commanded the field through Silverstone's opening 3 races. And the one who went so closely toe-to-toe with Christian Lebay on 3 incredibly close finishes in Silverstone at the opening round of the season is now back onto the grid, faster and more powerful than ever in the 45 Lexus. And as we mentioned before, and I'll hold on to this claim all the way to the end of this championship, him being back in now after round 5 at the Red Bull Ring with an even more confident performance today here in Spa lays in a very, very strong precedent that he will challenge the championship if he continues to have form like this, because he shows really no ceiling to his performance. This was the same kind of performance we've had, pardon me, in GT4 racing from Lebay, who went on to dominate 2 back-to-back championship titles over on the GT4 Pro-Am Cup, with a likelihood for him to go on to take a 3rd this season. One is only left to wonder then, what would it have been like if Zalan Such decided to stick around for those rounds? He wasn't absent for rounds 2, 3 and 4. What would the championship have looked like then? Likely it would have been the case the 45 would have been leading. But this is definitely going to shake things up, because I have it on good authority to assume by the time we get into the last 3 rounds of the championship, actually no, the last 2 rounds, because we do have a 3x40 on the penultimate, that we will be looking at a championship fight between Lebay and Such. These 2 drivers, they're a cut above the field at the moment. Brooklyn Donkin and Wright are about to advance, I'd say, up through the order here. David Tangway will still likely hold on to a confident top 5 position, but keep a close eye there on Wright, because if he continues to outscore the Bentley, he'll be up in the chances to fight on the podium not long from now. 32 minutes left to go in this race. Zalan Such leads, Lebay in 2nd, Donkin 3rd, Wright 4th, and Tangway in 5th. Joey Fisher, the only driver left in the top 10 yet to have pitted. He's one of 2 drivers overall still left to go into that pit lane. Ben Cheeseman in 7th, George Todd in 8th, Kyle Jenkins in 9th, Richard Cecil leading the AMS after we see Joey Fisher into the pit lane. Right now he's division 2nd, but 10th overall on the field. Stefan Nikolai in 11th, JM Quito in 12th, Danny Felix in 13th, Didier Potvin in 14th, Cedric Grenier-Massey in 15th, Sergio Belda in 16th, Christophe Dupois in 17th, Andrew Veldkamp in 18th, Matthew Badensky in 19th, and Ivan Sanchez in 20th, Karina Stinson in 21st. We're down, I think they're the scope of some 3 cars from the race start. We started with 24 vehicles, now down to 21. We saw among them was Everaldo dos Santos, who had a very, very bad end to his race. Not one that he wanted at all. Snuffed out in the first 10 minutes. A brutal, brutal exit of round 6. Joey Fisher now into the pit lane here in the number 59. And that's kicked the doors open here for Richard Cecil. It's go time for the number 5. Out through turn 16 at the curb of Paul Frere on his way to Blanchimont. Soon to return then to the lead of the AM division. As it stands here for Wright, the number 54, now 1.6 seconds away from Brooklyn Donkin. There is still the chance, and we also see there with the addition of David Tangway, is the chance for a continued fight for 3rd. Now, it's worth noting that not long ago in this race was it a case where Wright and Tangway were fighting with Donkin behind them. Now, that's flipped on its head, with Donkin leading this charge for 3rd ahead of Wright and Tangway. So how time flies here in Spa, and how well a race it's been so far for this one. Donkin could very well come away from this with a podium here in Spa. And assessing things here for Brooklyn Donkin, this will be his first podium this season. Because having a look through his last couple of results, best result was been 5th place. He got that in the Red Bull Ring last round. He also got it in the middle of the 3 races at the start of the season at Silverstone. So this is standing upon Brooklyn Donkin's best chance here of a good result this season. Now, you know, 5th place is great, but I'm sure with a driver of his ambition, he's been aiming for a podium all season long, and now the opportunity is in his hands. 29 minutes to the line. He's got to make the most of what he's got here, and with Wright in pursuit, he has really got a hammer down between now and the checkered flag. He's played the strategy out very, very well. You see they're moving over to let him through. Danny Felix, 4th in the AMS at the moment. Looking to catch on board then with that Lexus. Let's go and find on board here with a number 54 of Wright. Go and see things from his point of view as he closes in on Brooklyn Donkin. Now, this could be a very dramatic fight on our hands between these two. Down through turn 10. 1.6 seconds apart. Now, it's worth pointing this out. David Tanguay is closer to Wright than Wright is to Donkin. So he'll be towing that Bentley along into this fight if he hopes to catch up to that BMW. We could find ourselves, again, as we spoke of before, with these same 3 drivers, albeit in a different order around, flipped on its head here, fighting once again, as they did in the start of this race. Stay on board, though, with Wright. We'll be back to you in just a moment's time. So following on with Wright on his way down through Blanchimont. 1.1 seconds, so pretty sizable evidence to suggest here he is catching up slowly but surely. And once he gets into the slipstream there on Brooklyn Donkin and he starts making his presence a lot more known, this gap could spiral down between the 17 and the 54. And all the meanwhile, he's still towing that 30 along with him. Tanguay has his trailer hitched to the 54 in front. He's not letting go of that Lexus anytime soon. Down through turn 1. Following with him as he goes up through Arouge and Radion. You see there from Wright, just only lifting the throttle slightly. The 114 now has a drive-through penalty just after turn 20, and the reason I say that is because he picked that up right as he crossed the line. It went from 3 laps to serve to 2 almost in an instant, and that's because he got a track limits violation out of the bus stop chicane. Ben Cheeseman now with a drive-through penalty, and it's gone horribly awry for him at this time, as it also has for his teammate looking around here, yeah, Charlie Harker, who dropped out of this race not long ago. He was one of the disconnects we had. It's been a rough day here for the 5-star esports team. They're now down to the 114 and the 113. And it's likely to be a case here when he serves his drive-through penalty that he's going to find himself down a position off of Todd and closer to his teammate Kyle Jenkins. They'll be looking at a 4th row finish across all boards here. Getting an update in from Wright and Donkin. Tanguay also. And that gap has quickly spiraled out for Tanguay. Now 4 seconds down off of Wright, as Wright struggles to maintain anything south of a second right now. Still a second and a half between himself and Brooklyn Donkin. That BMW has held on with an iron vice for the lead of their fight, as things would stand. The last of those podium positions. Following here with Brooklyn Donkin down through Blanchimont. Watching on board here, this is not often a camera we get to use, but following here the helmet cam from Brooklyn Donkin, so we see what he sees right now. On lap 40 on the run up through Arouge and Radion, it just gives you a semblance of what the feeling is like inside of the car. The car's Understeering just a little bit there uphill. So much momentum being carried along with it. Makes things very difficult on the run uphill with such limited grip at his disposal. 114 in. So too is the number 12. Recent troubles then for George Todd. What on earth's gone on for him here? This is a very sudden situation for him. He's in the pit lane and he's out. George Todd is out of this race. What on earth happened for him whilst we were watching with Donkin? I'm at a complete loss there for what to say. The number 12, but held on to one of the most confident drives of this race, extinguished. It's sort of one of those moments, really, where because we don't have... I imagine looking back through this, it'll be much more obvious what's going on, and we've just not seen it because we were focused on something else at the time, but it's sort of one of those things that happens where you just don't know how to react. Well, that is horrible news for the number 12. Not the way he wanted his race to end, and it was certainly a comeback story of the ages, but snuffed out. And that's the fragility of motorsports and everything that goes along with it. Just as quickly as your race can be promoted and you can see fantastic things come your way just as quickly, can fate have other plans. We'll be curious to find out what happened. We'll be keeping an ear to the ground on that one, but a horrible race end there for that of George Todd. I'm still at somewhat of a loss there for what to say. We did get some more information on why one of the 5-star cars backed out of this race. Charlie Harker, hardware failure from the number 72. So we found out his pedal had broken mid-race, and that forced him in an early retirement from the race there. Technical grounds, hardware failure. Now, in the meantime, we have now seen here with Wright versus Donkin, that has now escalated into a fight for third. We'll stay on board here with the defending car. We'll go later on board with the attacking car from Wright as we go up through Eau Rouge and Raidillon. 22 minutes left to go in this race for these two. And judging off the position of the race leader, that's going to give us roughly about 10 more laps here between us and the checkered flag. In the background, you can see David Tanguay still holding on there, just shy of 4 seconds away from this ongoing fight for third. Following here with Wright getting very close now to the back end of that number 17. A bit of a step out there in the no-name corner. He caught too much of that curb on the inside, and I think the car bottomed out. So we just found out as well for George Todd, the reason why he started, and this is courtesy of his entry to our Twitch chat, and how we found this out: hardware failure on the start. That's what forced him into the pit lane. And if I'm on reasonable assumption, was it a case where that came back for you? For context, we are speaking sort of on and off here with George Todd from our Twitch chat to sort of figure out what happened there. I mean, it was such a brilliant drive. Was it hardware failure that took you out of that one, or was it another driver? So we follow on board here with Donkin v Wright. 9/10 of a second between the two as they make their way up through Blanchimont. Number 17 and the number 54 still close in arms here for that fight. Now, it's worth pointing out that Bentley is gaining ground. He's getting back in with them. We could find ourselves very much so in a three-way fight for third. We caught word there from George Todd, just the pedals, and he had to restart the wheel. So it was another case here of hardware failures that took another driver out of this race. So it happened first for Charlie Harker. We saw it created those issues at the start. Now we have explanation as to why that was for George Todd, and now it sadly ended his race as well. We've seen plenty of good drivers before be ridden with hardware problems that have kept them from the results that they've wanted. We know for a fact for a driver that currently leads in the NLRL Sunday League, Cas van Veltzen, he's had a few issues in the past with hardware as well, and I'm sure he's going to be checking over through his now after seeing this today, and praying nothing comes his way tomorrow evening at the season finale. Watching him with Donkin. We're going to go and catch on board, though, with Wright as he now takes up helm of the attack. We do just see here a fight for sixth. Richard Cecil versus Kyle Jenkins. We'll just quickly check in with these two, keeping an ear to the ground on any updates from the fight between Wright and Donkin. We'll catch on with these two a little later on. Going to catch on board then with the not the 45, so that's the race leader, the 54. On board with Wright. In towards Stavolo. Now the curb of Paul Frere coming up next at turn 16. Fighting for grip there, the Lexus. Trying to keep with the BMW. Now it's a little bit of a sharper turn in on that M4, but the Lexus has a bit more stability. The 113, Kyle Jenkins, now has a drive through for track limits in his current fight with Richard Cecil. And a drive-through penalty now for Wright, so it comes apart at the seams. We saw him step over the lines of Blanchimont, and that kills that fight in the water. He's adamant to stay out and see things through to the end here. And this is just music to the ears of that number 30 behind. David Tanguay is now not only going to see his way up to the second row, he is being towed along into this fight now, having gained the distance back over Wright, and could be using this now as an opportunity for some more free slipstream after a bit of a wonky run off the exit of La Source to get back up into the swing of things for a fight of third place. Brooklyn Donkin facing a two-pronged defensive right now with nothing left to lose, as that drive-through penalty will exalt him of that top five. A horrible turn of events there for Wright, a driver who put on such a phenomenal performance. Track limits biting him on the backside in the closing 20 minutes of racing here, after what has nearly been an hour and 3/4 coming up on. Snuffed out for the 54. I mean, this has been really the going sentiment for a lot of drivers here. A lot of that progress just stamped out in one fell swoop. It was in the early parts of the race, damages and penalties for Dos Santos. It was hardware failures for Harker and for Todd. And now we see it's track limits here for Wright. Spa giveth and evidently Spa taketh away. Just under 17 minutes left to go, 16.5 to be specific, and taking a look back at the order to see that the top 10 now has 2 drive-through penalties, so a big shift in the running order is coming up here. We see in the case for Ben Cheeseman and Kyle Jenkins. As Jenkins comes in, Cheeseman will inherit 7th place. Richard Cecil now next in his iron sights for a chance here of what is very likely to be the case now with that drive-through penalty on the horizon for Wright. That could very well be a fight for the top 5 we're seeing here. Richard Cecil far and away in the lead of the AMs now. "16 minutes left to go in this race, coming up on the last quarter of an hour. So the pit window is about to slam shut. So this is a very scary thing to see here for Wright. This is something that he has to consider now. It's into the pits or it's never. Down through to the pit, not the pit stop chicane, the bus stop chicane. He stays out. So Wright will just have to take this one on the chin, as it would appear. If I'm not mistaken, with the pit being shut, does that run independently? Maybe it does. I'm not 100% sure. We've never found ourselves in this situation before. Pit windows are such a scarce thing to find in the modern regulations on any series we've covered. This does present ourselves with a unique situation, not one that we've often met. If at all, this is just as much for these drivers, possibly their first time encountering such an issue, as the pit window shuts. Does that mean for Wright that drive-through penalty cannot be served, and it will be a static penalty at the end of this race? He's not giving up just yet. There is still a fight to be had, and one that he will continue to pursue with ruthless vigor in the last 15 minutes of racing here in Spa. The way it stands, though, at the moment, whether it's a drive-through or disqualification, Wright could be seeing Richard Cecil into a possible top 5. You see here David Tanguay almost shoving the Lexus down through turn 10, urging him to get moving, knowing that right now with that penalty on his head, He's standing in the way of Tanguay's chances to fight for a podium. Watching in here behind as they make their way through the bus stop chicane. And more on that in a moment, because we do have a yellow flag out for a driver stranded down at Campus and Stavelos. The 505, Matthew Podensky, in trouble. Front end damage, as it would appear. Nothing severe, but it is definitely more than just a slight bump for him. The 505 in a spot of bother there as he gets back going onto the track. Green flags with 13.5 minutes left to go. Still no word yet on what the calling is for the 54. As he will, regardless, now need to come in this lap. If he stays out, there will be heavy consequences his way. But it does leave us wondering, can he even serve a drive-through with a pit window shut? Well, we're about to find out. He can still serve his drive-through penalty, says Danny Boy 84 in chat. Thank you. I was a little bit confused there because it was a case, well, is that even possible with a pit window shut? I thought it was a case where, you know, if the pit window is shut, you can't do anything in the pit lane, regardless. Into the pits he goes. Right, fighting that one all the way to the very end. It's a bitter feeling for that Lexus, knowing the progress he made in today's race, now having been for nothing. But it has presented the chances now for David Tanguay to fight Brooklyn Donkin for a podium. For Donkin, I imagine this is a case now, knowing the kind of progress he's made, knowing the kind of strategy he's had in this race, he needs to make well certain now he doesn't end up like the others and pick up a drive-through penalty between now and the end of this race, because that will spell doom for him. This is the chance for Donkin to finally put himself on the podium after his best result of the season being 5th in the pro category. This is his chance, made crystal clear. Number 65, newest to pick up a drive-through, Sergio Belda. Down to the bus stop chicane, running all the way out wide, leaps up over the curbs and wall. Right into the wall there. What on earth has gone on for him there? Oh, this is questionable. Does he know there's not a handbrake on those? Oh, there he goes. Okay, fair enough. Into the pit lane goes Sergio Belda. Leapt up over those curves and then just straight into that wall. Nothing he could have done, because even if he steered in, with the front axle and rear axle bouncing the way that they were, there was just no chance there was going to be any grip on the tyres. Looking in here, and Cheeseman versus Richard Cecil. As it would stand, though, with Wright still having emerged, he is in the top 5, so not for nothing, perhaps, then, for the 54. 11 minutes left to go. David Tanguay now getting closer and closer to being less than a second out from Brooklyn Donkin. This is going to be a rather interesting turn of events coming up. Also worth pointing out here, Ivan Sanchez was momentarily within a second of Dupois. Of course, now that is not the case. So looking to go and catch on board with either of the major parties now fighting. Cecil and Cheeseman fighting for 6th place overall. For Richard Cecil, he's already got the lead of Am far and away secured here as we drop into the last 10 minutes of racing, looking to go and catch on board here with Brooklyn Donkin and David Tanguay off the exit of La Source. They have now picked up into side-by-side action. So on board with Donkin, the driver who has held on to the podium for the longest time here up through Rouge and Rally on a difference in lines as they emerge up through turn 5, now up towards turn 6. They're side-by-side. The Bentley up on the inside at turn 6 onto the Camel. Whereabouts does Donkin find himself in this fight right now? Fending off 3rd with every fibre of his being. The Bentley on the inside, though. So what can he make of it? Longer onto the brakes, in towards Lacombe and Melmedy. The 17 on the inside, then to the outside, then onto the inside, then back to the outside as we make our way out through Melmedy. Carrying it all the way around, still leaves the inside open as leaping up the inside. There goes the number 30, nearly a rub between the pair of them down at turn 10. Brooklyn Donkin fighting this with everything he's got, but David Tanguay is up into 3rd. It's not over until they say it's over. 9.5 minutes left to go in this race. Seeing red is the number 17, and after a little bit of a slip there through Pouon for the number 30, This is now presenting the opportunity for the number 17. The 30 holds off the inside, knowing he would leap for it. Going down in towards Campus. He'll be to the outside of the first part, then the inside of the second, but just can't squeeze in. Off the exit then of Campus into Stavolo. You can see here, it's very clever what he's trying to do. We can almost barely make it out, though, through the glare against the windscreen, but he's gone for a more aggressive line to carry as much momentum necessary. Knowing the Bentley is one of a very select number of machines capable of outpacing the BMW, Donkin has to throw absolutely everything into this drive now to get back onto third. The kitchen sink along with it, out through Blanchimont. With the 30 trying to hold the inside, he holds set out to the road. It looks like a bit of a bump between the pair of them in towards the bus stop chicane. If that wasn't a bump, I would be genuinely surprised on the exit of turn 20. Number 800 brings the yellow flags out. Aston Martin in crisis. Karina Stinson stranded down at turn 8. As we continue to watch in here, Donkin versus Tanguay for third in this race. Information there from the 800. They're back up and running. Have to see it to believe it here on the fight for third. David Tanguay put on a great battle there against Brooklyn Donkin. Now we'll see how it picks up onto the next lap here out through Rouge and Radion. You can see with Donkin, he's throwing everything into this drive. Knowing how far he's come so far on this race. 8 minutes left to go. He is not about to let this slip between his fingers. His first podium in this season. The Bentley starting to struggle there for understeer. Both of them are, for that matter. The tyres swiftly wearing out. Coming up into traffic as well. JM Kito and Matthew Badensky up in front. Down and towards Pouon. This could throw a bit of a wrench in the works here. Swiftly approaching the lap traffic is the Bentley. Looking to catch in then with the Bentley at the lead of this fight now for third place. Going to catch on board if we can here with that of David Tanguay as he makes his way out through Stavolo in towards the curb of Paul Frere. Traffic in his midst at the moment, trying to get out past Badensky. And also trying to use the 505 to get a little bit of slipstream in there as well. Maybe try and slam the door shut on the 17 behind him. And that was almost the case there. Badensky dangerously close to Donkin, but of course it's just a case of with these cars that are being lapped, it's a wrong place, wrong time situation. They can't call when that's going to happen. We see here for the number 26, JM Kito holds long off the exit of turn 20 as to not step in front of the number 30 nor the number 17 on their way down towards La Source. Still close to one another, so no current call off yet on whether or not this fight will end. I think this has a pretty good chance of carrying all the way to the checkered flag. 6 minutes left to go. For the race lead, the number 45, we're in the scope of some 2, maybe 3 more laps before the race is out here in round 6 of the World Series by Competizione Performance League, powered by Malwa Transport and live exclusively on TRTN. Down the Kemmel Straight, it's worth pointing out here for David Tanguay with a much better exit of Rouge and Radion. Brooklyn Donkin is back into this fight, heading back in towards Lacombe and Melmedy, going for the outside once more. We saw this strategy used before, but Tanguay swiftly slams that door. And he just realised this long into it that I was rhyming the entire time. Commentator and lyricist, evidently. Want to put that on the CV. Looking here down through turn 10. After a bit of run into gravel after Melmedy, he drops further in behind now. The Lexus in front, a full second emerging between the pair of them. The race leader, he's crossed the line not long ago, so number 45, Zalan Such. That currently marks that we've got about 3 laps of racing left to go here in Spa before the end of round 6. 1.2 seconds between himself and Tangray. Now, we've seen this argument tenfold in the conversation between machine lineups, and when you take a look at a car like the Bentley and a car like the BMW, what you are looking at here is the trade-off between stability and maneuverability. Albeit this time it's between two cars that are front-engined. And really only it's ever the case with the BMW comes up in the conversation of front-engine only when it comes to maneuverability. Because this one has arguably the sharpest turning of any front-engine car. The weight distribution they've got when they designed this car is formidable. It gives it such a almost violent poke into the corners. It's what allows this car to really dart around the more technical tracks. But here in Spa, where you need consistent stability and a reliable performance, the BMW has come up short often a time here. That's not to say they're not race winning. Far from it, as a matter of fact. Melvin Milliston won here back in Season 2 of the Sunday League over on NLRL. 505 in trouble, as it would appear, and that is for Matthew Badensky. We'll go and catch on board here with that 505 to see he's into the wall, so not quite seen how it started, but we've just seen how it ended, and that could very well be the end of Badensky's time in round 6. Off of Radion it was there, he's into the wall. .4 seconds now between Tangray and Donkin. We'll catch up with them a little later on here, as we do see slowly creeping in the frame on Stefan Nicolai is Richard Cecil, the number 5, 1.7 seconds away. The 55 runs deep into turns 19 and 20. That could bring him back in. Seeing here from Christian Lebey's point of view, now 24 seconds down the road from Zalan Such. Now this has certainly got to put a bit of a chill in the spine here on the multiple-time champion. And he currently leads the pros by a fair distance over Tangray in second, but with Such back into competition and now emerging ahead of him, how long does he hope to hold on to that lead? As Zalan Such still maintains third in the championship. And having a glance in from our data here, I mean, that gap's really not that far away. We're talking here about 54 points between the top 3, with Lebey at the forefront of it, Zalan Such at the back of the podium. Roughly there. Now, it starts small here with being just outscored for one race. It's a case where you're only seeing a points difference of about 3 in one of these races. 35 points for the winner, 32 points for second place, and an additional point for the fastest lap, so that would bring it up to 36 points over 32, so a difference in 4. But he can start to claw this back, and especially with next week's race coming up, the Barcelona triple header at round 7, that's one to watch out for, because that can catch you. We saw that winning in those races was paramount to his success to remain on the podium. And I think it's been long awaited here of his return to the field. We saw him return back for the Red Bull Ring, but this is the Zalan Such we remember from round 1, as now the number 45 rounds on to that last of his flying laps in this race. Still holding on to that fastest time, 2:16.465. That'll be an additional point for him, unless anyone can try to show him up for that. The 505 still in the pit lane. Badensky, a bit of a soft DNF now after hitting the wall at some considerable speed. We'll catch on with the 54 in due course here, because Zalan Such is about to return to the winner's circle after a long time away here. A 5-round long winning drought for that number 45. We'll see him to the checkered flag not long from now. Getting a look back in with the remainder of some of the fights on the field here. Tangray v Donkin now out 3 seconds apart from one another for the fight of 3rd place. Looking further down the order, JM Keto versus Kyle Jenkins, 1.5 seconds apart from one another as they round Blanchimont. Then getting a glance in with Joey Fisher, who is looking at a podium here. The number 59, albeit won't be equalising on his best result. That would be second place, which he picked up most recently in Watkins Glen. But Joey Fisher is back on form here for the 59. Richard Cecil turning things around to what could very well be in the next couple of minutes a race win. Zalan Such has just been unstoppable in this race. More on that in a moment. We do have look to be a little bit of trouble there for the 800. Just a quick spin around there for Karina Stinson. She had the same problem at the Red Bull Ring. Following on board then with Zalan Such, this has been an unmistakable drive here from the number 45. Ruthless pace, ruthless consistency. And he's piled all of that into a dominant drive here to put himself some nearly 24 seconds up the road off of second place. Yellow flags out for the number 91, but it'll be checkered flags coming out in a moment's time here for the number 45 Lexus. Almost get those two mixed up. Down to the line then goes Zalan Such. The checkered flags fly for him after 5 rounds away from a race win. Zalan Such is a winner once more here in Spa. The 45 victorious in the pros. And what a drive and what a return to form this has been after such a long time away in the opening half of the season. Into the second half, literally floating with excitement, as you can see there, is Zalan Such. What a performance by him over the course of today's race. We still have one more race winner to crown. As it stands right now, Ben Schiessman to the line, Stefan Nikolai along with him, but it's Richard Cecil back onto winning form in the AMS. Back-to-back wins for him after the Red Bull Ring. Now another win today, having turned things around from certain oblivion. The number 5, victorious once again, will continue to open the taps up on his lead of the AM Championship. Brilliant stuff from the American talent in the number 5. But it's the Hungarian talent up front who's back on winning form for the first time since Silverstone. Zalan Such, unmistakable performance there from that number 45. Very well done to him. Labay for second. Tanguay to put it a Malwa double podium in the pros. With the Bentley having fought through thick and thin there to return to the podium. A very solid drive indeed up against the odds there for David Tanguay. Down to the line goes the number 30 for third place. Brooklyn Donkin fought this one off an odd strategy and brought things around to a top 5 finish. You cannot argue with that one. The number 17, brilliant result for him today. 54 of Wright went up against it with the late penalties in, but he'll be seeing, by looks of things here, a top 5 on the podium then. JM Quito in the AM category and Joey Fisher. In between them then for 9th place overall, Kyle Jenkins. Danny Felix on his first ever appearance to this grid will appear then to a top 5 finish in the AMS. 4th place and 11th overall. Didier Potvin looking to make a top 5 appearance. Much to the chagrin then of Cedric Grenier-Massey, who finishes down in a Division 6th. We'll get the full read of the results in a moment's time. But what a race that's been here in Spa as we kick off the second half of the championship here in the World Series by Competizione Performance League, powered by Malwa Transport. We wait to see then down to the line the 54 at the end of this race, but it's Zalan Such, your race winner. And getting a full look at the results then. Such wins in Spa in the pros and Richard Cecil wins in the AMS. The full result then. Such first, Labay second, and Tanguay in third, Donkin 4th, Wright 5th, Cheeseman in 6th, Nikolai in 7th, Cecil Division 1st but 8th overall, Quito Division 2nd but 9th overall, Jenkins 10th, Fisher in Division 3rd and 11th overall, and then further down through the order, Felix 12th, Potvin 13th, Grenier-Massey 14th, Feldkamp 15th, Belder 16th, Dupois 17th, Sanchez 18th, and Stinson in 19th. Taking a look at the wad of DNFs, there were many of them then for a variety of reasons. Most recent then was Badensky. We also saw Todd, Harker, Pereira, Dos Santos, and Franca out of this race. What a performance, though, by Zalan Such, back into winning form after what has been a very long drought in this series, both from appearances and from race wins themselves, after finishing second at the Red Bull Ring on his return to the series last week. And this is certainly painting a vivid picture for what the next half of the championship's going to look like. Taking a look into where we'll be next, heading to Barcelona, onto the return of the 3x40s, the first of the second half of the season and the second overall in this championship. The 3x40 coming up on May 2nd. That'll be the next round of the championship. If you're joining us tomorrow, do tune in, 6:30 p.m. BST, live from the NLRL Sunday League at Alton Park, Season 5 finale. It all comes down to this one. Tune in then. We'll catch you later. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Take care. Good night.